Lars was prepared with his sword and believed that the blade was about to strike Karen. Although he appeared saddened, he bade her farewell. As he was about to slash at her, Karaboshi suddenly stepped in and blocked the attack, shocking everyone as they wondered when Karaboshi had arrived. Karaboshi then instructed Oiso to take Karen away immediately. Oiso rushed to lift Karen and began to leave, but Amshi ordered Haria to kill them. Haria fired an arrow which was cut down by Ria. Eventually Oiso managed to reach the gate with Karen, but the gate closed behind them. With that, Karaboshi relaxed and turned invisible again, leaving the remaining three confused about where he had come from. Since Karaboshi had disappeared, they began shouting for him to show himself. Karaboshi, who was standing right in front of them, mocked their abilities by wondering aloud whether their detection skills were completely useless. When he revealed himself again, Lars was shocked and stepped back, wondering how long Karaboshi had been standing there. Amshi questioned whether Karaboshi had been planning to stay hidden all along. Karaboshi replied that he had been standing there the entire time. The three grew irritated, wondering how many times Karaboshi intended to interfere. Karaboshi responded that he had not done anything to them the last time. Lars, trying to remain calm, told Karaboshi not to pretend that he was not scared. Amshi then stated that Masatsugu was not with them. Karaboshi replied by warning them that something was coming and that he was about to summon it, so they should be prepared. Amshi laughed, asking what was wrong with Karaboshi and claiming that they were only joking. Karaboshi became angry and questioned whether they truly thought that hurting Karam so badly was merely a joke. Lars replied that it had been an accident and apologized, asking for forgiveness. Karaboshi then questioned whether they were the ones who had filled his blog with such comments and whether that too was supposed to be a joke. Amshi claimed he had no idea what Karaboshi was talking about. Someone then pointed out that 6 out of 10 visits had resulted in comments and 3 of those were from new readers, exactly the same number as the 3 of them. Confused, the trio wondered whether Karaboshi's blog really received so few views. Amshi assumed Karaboshi's remarks were meant to provoke him, but in reality Karaboshi was pleased. Haria finally asked whether Karaboshi was saying that even receiving insults through a few comments made him happy. Karaboshi felt deeply uneasy, thinking that they should not look at him that way, and he resolved never to speak about his blog to anyone again. Karaboshi wondered if dying here would at least spare him from explaining his blog analytics ever again. Suddenly, he sensed something strange, and wondered whether it was a Monpare. The entire area began to shake, and they thought about escaping, but before they could react, monsters appeared from all sides. The 3 of them tried to fight back. Karaboshi realized that the situation was not good, and decided that he had to assign his skill points. His proficiency with the one-handed sword suddenly increased, but he noted that it was not the time to check the details. At that moment he noticed that the maximum growth had been achieved, and Amshi called out to him, wondering what that screen was. Karaboshi threw an item toward the gate, and instructed everyone to run there. Neither the monsters nor the others managed to reach them in time. Suddenly a wolf attacked, but Amshi attempted to block it with his shield, after which Lars slashed at it. Haria was already engaged in his own battle. As Karaboshi observed them fighting, he thought that it was exactly what one would expect from adventurers working on the 8th and 9th floors, noting that their attacks were well coordinated and that it seemed likely they would survive. However, the 3 grew irritated and shouted at Karaboshi, telling him to stop giving them orders. When Amshi tried to retrieve his arrows, he discovered that all of them had been stolen by a goblin, which also bit him. Soon after, another wolf attacked Haria. The others became worried, and Amshi was struck as well after lowering his guard. In the end, all 3 were left surrounded by monsters. Seeing this, Karaboshi felt that the situation had turned truly dangerous for them. Lars went to assist Haria, and together they began clearing a path. However, they soon realized that Haria's situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. While they were distracted, Karaboshi remarked that only Lars was wielding a longsword, and that he could not afford to lower his guard. Soon after, Amshi was attacked again by several wolves, prompting Karaboshi to move in to help her, wondering what she had been doing. Amshi explained that it was her first time fighting so many monsters at once. Karaboshi observed the monsters and thought that no one in their right mind would normally rush into a monster parade, but the situation was clearly different now. He stated that if they did not fight they would die, and he emphasized that there were comrades they needed to rescue. Hearing this, Amshi regained some confidence and stood up with her sword, shouting at Karaboshi to shut up and claiming that everything would have been fine if he had not been there. Karaboshi replied that they would be safe once they reached the gate, and added that he would continue helping them fight even without Amshi's approval. Karaboshi then fully engaged in the battle. After some time, even Lars collapsed from exhaustion and said that it was impossible for them to win. Amshi expressed her concern, pointing out that no matter how many monsters they killed, more continued to appear. Karaboshi understood her concern, and became confused as well, wondering why the number of monsters was not decreasing. He was certain that they had already killed over 300 monsters, yet they had been unable to set up a barricade because the dungeon kept absorbing the corpses. Karaboshi began to suspect that the monsters they defeated were being resurrected, and concluded that this was likely not a normal monster parade. Karaboshi noticed that Amshi had suddenly started laughing uncontrollably before rushing toward the monsters to fight them. This behavior left Karaboshi confused, as he wondered what was wrong with him. Meanwhile, the monsters continued their relentless attacks. Karaboshi called out to Ria, declaring that he would cut his way through them using his full strength. As he focused more carefully, Karaboshi realized that the creatures before them were not ordinary monsters, and that the parade itself seemed to have paused unnaturally. He then sensed a strong monster presence coming from a bulging area, yet no monsters were spawning from it. When Karaboshi attempted to move closer, he noticed that goblins were blocking the path. He halted briefly, then advanced and slashed at the area, hoping that doing so would finally bring the monster parade to an end. The moment he struck, everything around them began to shake, and the monsters looked around in confusion. Karaboshi guessed if even the monsters had realized they were already dead and were just too stubborn to stop moving. Karaboshi felt an overwhelming sense of sickness and realized that he could no longer defend himself properly in that state. At that moment, he noticed that Ria had stepped in to protect him by attacking the monsters, and he silently thanked her for it. Karaboshi then realized that the corpses were no longer disappearing, and that there were no signs of resurrection. This confirmed his suspicion that the monsters had truly been defeated. He stood up, put on his mask and headed toward the gate. The scene then shifted to a group of soldiers who remarked that everything had gone exactly as Masatsugu had predicted. They discussed how troublesome those people were, and wondered how many times they had already arrested them. Their leader admitted that the situation was deeply shameful, and believed that recovery would be extremely difficult. He then declared that the Shikama group had to be captured at any cost. As the gate opened, the soldiers discovered an ongoing monster parade. The leader immediately ordered everyone to prepare themselves and begin firing at the monsters. The leader noticed that there were humans present as well, along with a floating plant and a masked figure, which left him confused as he wondered whether the masked individual was a demon beast. Karaboshi introduced himself as an adventurer and thanked them for their hard work. The soldiers then asked their captain what they should do, while one of them questioned what action to take if that adventurer was affiliated with the Shikama group. Suddenly, the captain asked Karaboshi what had happened to the Shikama group. Karaboshi apologized and explained that he had been unable to save them. One of the soldiers pointed out the severed hands and swords scattered around, urging the captain to look closely. The leader told Karaboshi that he wanted to support him, but there was a risk that Karaboshi might be struck by stray arrows, so he asked whether Karaboshi could hold on until they finished evacuating the others. Karaboshi agreed and said he would do his best. The captain then ordered everyone to prepare their weapons for close combat, emphasizing that rescuing people was their top priority. At one point, he noticed a slime eel beneath his foot. After some time, Karaboshi finally returned to the gate and collapsed there from exhaustion. The others praised Karaboshi for his efforts, while the captain instructed everyone to maintain their formation until the evacuation was complete. Some guards wondered why Karaboshi had been fighting demon beasts using only a dagger, and questioned whether the mask he wore was a magical item. Another soldier asked whether it enhanced his physical abilities, and whether the plant accompanying him was a demon beast. Karaboshi confirmed that it was a tamed creature, which shocked everyone present. The captain stepped in and scolded them for being too noisy, telling them to save their questions until they reached the surface. As he looked at Karaboshi, he thought that Karaboshi was a strange individual. His abilities seemed average, yet he had faced a monster parade, head-on, and even used a demon beast as support. One soldier then recalled that Karaboshi was a famous adventurer, which made the captain wonder whether Karaboshi was some kind of celebrity. They remembered Masatsugu, who had taken an interest in Karaboshi and claimed that Karaboshi was close to ranker level, referring to him as the masked pervert. Everyone turned to look at Karaboshi at once, and at that moment Karaboshi suddenly collapsed. Uso was sitting nearby while Karim lay on a temporary bed. Karaboshi arrived and asked how Karim was doing. Uso was startled when she saw him and apologized, saying that she had not realized it was Karaboshi. Karaboshi replied that he already knew how exhausted she was, yet she was still taking care of Karim, and for that he was grateful to her. Uso responded that it was nothing compared to what Karaboshi had done to rescue them. Karaboshi then noticed that Karim was awake. When Karim saw him, she tried to move but quickly collapsed again. Concerned, Karaboshi asked whether she was all right. Uso immediately said that Karim should not move so much. When Karaboshi asked about Karim's condition, Uso explained that the main injury had been a deep laceration on her back which had already healed due to the medicine. However, Karin had lost a large amount of blood. She added that most of the damage had been prevented thanks to Karim's armor, which was why she had not suffered any fatal wounds. Uso also mentioned that she had heard from the guards that Karaboshi had survived the monster parade, and she praised him, saying that he was incredible. However, Karaboshi did not look pleased and turned his face away. Uso then told him that he did not need to be modest because he truly deserved the praise, just as she and the others did, and that he should be proud of himself. Karaboshi sat down and thanked her quietly. Later that night, as Karaboshi was walking ahead and Karin followed him from a distance, Karin was overwhelmed with guilt, believing that everything that had happened was her fault. She thought that if she had endured a little longer and not let her guard down, everyone might have escaped. She felt that she could never forgive those three people, yet she also blamed herself, believing that Karaboshi would not have been forced into such a dangerous situation if not for her. Overcome with emotion, she began crying and called out to Karaboshi, apologizing. Karaboshi turned back and asked why she was apologizing. Karen said she was sorry for being helpless and weak and that if she had not been there, things might have turned out differently. Karaboshi walked over and gently patted her head, warning her that if she kept saying things like that he would hit her. He continued lightly tapping her head, making sure it did not count as a real hit. He told her that the fault lay with the others, and that she should not blame herself. He also admitted that he had lowered his guard and underestimated the enemy, which was why she had been hurt, making it his fault as well. Karen disagreed, insisting that she should have noticed the danger since she had been positioned at the rear. Suddenly Karaboshi shouted that if he had only been stronger, everyone might still be alive. He became emotional but tried to calm himself, saying that if he had been more composed, he could have helped them improve their skills. He admitted that he truly believed he could save them, but failed to do so, which was why he was angry with himself. Karen tried to comfort him, and Karaboshi finally suggested that they should grow stronger together. Karen agreed. When she returned home, she read a long post written by Karaboshi. As she went through it, she realized that many of the thoughts he had expressed were things she herself had been thinking about. However, she felt that Karaboshi appeared to be a completely different person in his blog, almost the opposite of how he usually behaved in person. In the post, Karaboshi sounded extremely excited and confidently declared that he would definitely grow stronger. She also noticed that people in the comments were constantly talking about the masked man they had seen recently. There were numerous discussions about him, including speculation about which floor he had appeared on, and stories from others who claimed to have spoken with him when they encountered the masked figure. Karaboshi discovered that both his spy skill and copy skill had increased. As he examined his stats, he reflected that during the 3 weeks after rescuing Oiso, he had been leveling up inside Chikano, which was likely when those stats had improved. Kurum stood in front of him and mentioned that her abilities had leveled up as well, although she had not allocated any skill points. Karaboshi responded that it was supernatural growth, reminding her that she had already mentioned doing regular workouts. Kurum added that recently, she no longer had to struggle much to launch massive magic attacks, and that she could now control the output far better than before. They spent a pleasant moment together, and Karaboshi felt that he was beginning to understand her feelings, thinking that seeing one's own efforts being rewarded was truly satisfying. Suddenly Akane arrived, seemingly about to welcome them, but her expression turned cold when she saw them. She told Karaboshi to leave if he did not intend to buy anything, adding that it was already very hot inside the shop. Karaboshi grew annoyed and wondered aloud whether she had nothing to say to them. Akane replied that she had actually been extremely worried about them. Hearing this shocked both of them. She continued explaining that since they had not returned, she feared they might have been slaughtered. Karaboshi shouted loudly that since they had caused her so much worry, she should at least make up for it. 10 minutes later, Karaboshi began laying out the remaining loot in front of Akane. She screamed in disbelief, asking why he was destroying her shop, and how many items he had brought. Karaboshi calmly replied that it was around 5,000. Akane was stunned and questioned how he could possibly have that many items. Karaboshi answered that it was the result of 1 month of hard work, and admitted that he simply wanted to see her reaction. Seeing her expression made him genuinely happy. Akane shouted that she was crying, not happy. She then began calculating the total, including a 5% bonus. Karaboshi stared at her in shock, as she remained silent for a moment, making him wonder what the final amount would be. Akane finally revealed that it came to approximately 3.5 million. Everyone was stunned upon hearing the figure. Akane added that she hoped her calculation was wrong this time, before asking what they wanted to purchase next. Karaboshi replied that he wanted to buy defensive equipment. Akane sighed and asked whether he had anything specific in mind. Karaboshi explained that he was aiming for the intermediate floors, and wanted the best quality mid-tier defensive armor. He also requested a completely new set of equipment for Karaman. Akane complained that the two of them had nearly ruined her, but eventually agreed, saying that all the money she had paid them would now return to her anyway. Karaboshi told her to bring the items and warned that he would not accept any trash equipment. As he and Karam prepared to leave, he hoped that Akane would do her best. Just then she stopped them, and thanked Karaboshi, offering her blessings. Karaboshi noticed this and casually remarked that it might rain the next day. Karaboshi, along with Karan, resumed exploring the dungeon to fight monsters. When they reached the 8th floor, they found some fruits and stopped to eat. After finishing everything, they returned to Akane, who was once again shocked to see that they had brought back a large number of items. Karaboshi asked her what she thought about the boss drop item. Akane explained that the stone was a magical item that generated heat when tapped, and that considering its size, it could be useful for cooking food. She added that 1 meter of the ivy was worth 10,000. Hearing the price stunned Karaboshi. Akane continued by explaining that the ivy could be used to make bowstrings and many other powerful weapons. She then mentioned that there was also a Cox combo necklace, remarking that Karaboshi had found something truly valuable. However, she warned him that the necklace was a cursed item, and advised him to think carefully before using it. She explained that it did have an effect, as it could potentially enhance Karaboshi's agility. Karaboshi wondered whether the curse would take his life or merely his remaining luck, and decided the latter had already been lost anyway. Karaboshi found the item appealing despite the warning. Akane then stated that it was now her turn, and revealed 2 boxes. However, Karaboshi and Karen started walking away. Shocked, Akane called out to them, telling them to wait and listen. She then presented a dagger. Karaboshi recalled that he had once struggled just to lift it, but when he tried now, he found that he could lift it easily, even though it was still somewhat heavy, and he quickly began to adjust to its weight. Akane commented that it seemed as though the dagger had chosen Karaboshi. Feeling pleased, Karaboshi asked about Karen's equipment. Akane then presented a bunny-themed armor dress. When Karen put it on, she noticed that it was a bit difficult to move in at first, but overall it was quite impressive. Karaboshi felt happy, realizing that he now had a full armor set as well. As he looked at Akane, he thought to himself that his previous gain of 3 million had completely vanished. He then told Karen that they should head back to the dungeon and test their new equipment by hunting demon beasts. Meanwhile, Akane had effectively stripped them of almost all their money in the process. Akane became annoyed upon hearing that. Soon after, Karaboshi and Karen headed back into the dungeon, prompting Akane to wonder whether they were planning to return to the 8th floor. Karaboshi replied that they were about to enter the middle floors, and that he also wanted to explore the 9th floor. As Karaboshi looked at Karen, he understood that she wanted to eat the melons found on the 8th floor. However, they proceeded to the 9th floor instead. Karaboshi warned her that they would likely encounter a new demon beast there, and advised her to stay on guard. Karen agreed. Suddenly a monster appeared in front of them. Karen found it extremely cute at first, but it immediately launched an attack in their direction. Karaboshi countered without hesitation, striking back and slashing it down with his new dagger. He was surprised by how incredible the weapon was, feeling as though he had cut through paper with ease. Turning to Karen, he remarked that although it looked cute, it was still a demon beast. Karen apologized for her earlier reaction, and the two of them continued forward, encountering several more demon beasts along the way. This time, Karen also assisted Karaboshi in cutting them down. Eventually they reached the final chamber, which they believed to be the boss room. Karen speculated that the boss would be a giant version of the monsters they had faced earlier. Karaboshi shared the same assumption. Karaboshi told Karen that he believed Reia's bullets would not work on the monster, as it showed no visible weaknesses. He also mentioned that he was already taking damage simply by entering its range. Karen then wondered what they should do next. Karaboshi instructed her not to expose herself and to launch an attack only when she felt it was necessary. Karaboshi rushed forward to engage the monster. It swung its weapon and attempted to strike him, but Karaboshi blocked the attack with his daggers. As he leapt into the air, the boss countered by slashing at him with its spear. Karaboshi managed to regain his footing and retaliated, at which point he noticed that Karen had also fired an attack at the monster. Suddenly the boss shifted its focus to Karen and charged toward her. Before it could reach her, Karaboshi intervened and pulled her out of danger. Once they reached a safer spot, Karaboshi warned her that the situation was extremely dangerous and that they needed to change their current fighting style. He added that they might still need to level up more before facing such enemies again. Karen then called out to him and lowered her head, causing Karaboshi to wonder if something was wrong. She admitted that she was worried and asked why he had saved her. Hearing this left Karaboshi confused. The scene then shifted to a crowded area where the ranker group, Ariel, arrived in an injured state. There a boy announced that they were all in serious trouble because monsters were approaching. Karen told Karaboshi that even if he questioned her reasons, whether he thought she was unreliable or believed she was not strong enough, she could not accept his attitude. Karaboshi simply denied it, explaining that behaving cautiously was normal in the worst-case scenarios. She shouted that they were partners, and Karaboshi agreed with her. She then asked him why he always rescued her at crucial moments. Karaboshi was confused, wondering what she was talking about, as he did not think the situation had been dangerous at all. Karan continued by saying that she was fully aware of her weaknesses and knew she was not reliable enough yet, but she still wanted to go on adventures with him. Therefore she wanted him to trust her more. Karaboshi was confused after hearing this and wondered what he should do. She then asked him to fight the way he wanted, without worrying about her. Karaboshi was shocked, as he thought she might get injured if he stopped caring. She suddenly shouted, telling him to leave everything else to her. Karaboshi agreed to everything she said. They both sat down, and Karaboshi realized that although he was supposed to protect her at all costs, she was also an adventurer, and his partner. Therefore he needed to place his trust in her during battles. Once again they coordinated better. Karaboshi struck at the boss, and suddenly Karan landed a hit on it, creating an opening. Karaboshi took advantage of this, turned invisible, and when the boss monster looked away, he stabbed his spear into its hand, dealing heavy damage. Karaboshi thought that everything was going well. Karan knew that she would unleash her magic spell while Karaboshi was attacking, and Karaboshi also understood that he had to do the same simultaneously. She reminded Karaboshi that compared to the previous fight, she was certain that Slurpee was an intelligent demon beast, and that they could use its characteristics against it. She then twisted forward and slashed at the boss, and together they finally managed to defeat it. As they moved in for a high five, both of them suddenly collapsed due to level-up sickness. After everything settled and they woke up, they discovered that the dropped items were spears of various sizes. However, they could not use them as equipment since neither of them knew how to fight with spears. Karan asked Kuraboshi to take a look at the smallest spear. Ria lifted it, but Kuraboshi took it back from her, saying that everything was fine and that they should not keep it. He wondered if the dungeon was mocking them for surviving by rewarding them with weapons meant for someone else. He then told Karan that they should move on toward the middle floor. Eventually they arrived at a vast area that felt incredible. Although they were still inside the dungeon, they could see the sky, and it appeared to be a single massive floor. Karan wondered where the path ahead might lead. Kuraboshi checked his status and discovered that he had finally obtained a divine skill. Karan asked what kind of skill it was, and Kuraboshi explained that it was a blessing from a god. He added that Masatsugu had one as well, and it seemed that reaching the middle floor was the condition to obtain such a skill. Karan was extremely happy, but both of them were confused and wondered why it was related to the god of cloth. Karan then asked Kuraboshi to look at her profile, and together they discussed the idea of a divine skill being granted to a human. Suddenly Karan became frightened, and both of them turned their attention to Rhea, after noticing that she had done something unexpected. After everything that followed, Kuraboshi was later seen in his room, working on his blog. He discovered that he had received a message, and felt excited at first, but after calming himself he checked it properly, and realized it was from Kagamitsu. The title indicated a request for assistance. When they joined the chat room, Kagamitsu first apologized for the sudden invitation. Kuraboshi was surprised, as he had never imagined receiving a call from a top-ranked adventurer like Kagamitsu. Kagamitsu immediately downplayed his fame, but Kuraboshi remarked that Kagamitsu could not even talk about Hokkaido without people bringing up beer and crab. Kuraboshi then asked why he had been called for assistance. Kagamitsu asked Kuraboshi whether he had heard about the monster parade occurring on the Chikano middle floor. Kuraboshi denied it, saying it was the first time he had heard of such an event, and asked which floor it was happening on. Kagamitsu explained that it was taking place on the 10th floor, and said he wanted Kuraboshi to participate in the subjugation. He added that he had heard rumors about Kuraboshi defeating an entire monster parade, and that Kuraboshi was an intermediate-level adventurer who had already reached the middle floors. Kuraboshi replied that he had barely reached that far, and was not particularly powerful. Kagamitsu responded that there was only one way to find out and that they needed to act if they wanted to prevent a stampede. Kuraboshi thought about it, and said that he did not feel strong enough, especially since he had never fought monsters on the 10th floor. Kagamitsu commented that it was unfortunate, but suggested that Kuraboshi would at least become famous by participating in the strategy meeting. Hearing this, Kuraboshi became excited and agreed. Later, Kuraboshi went to the home of Hokkaido's top-ranked adventurer, only to find that the building was in very poor condition. When he rang the bell, a girl opened the door and was startled to see him wearing a mask. Kuraboshi entered and introduced himself as heir. Several people were already seated inside, and a boy stood up and introduced himself as Kagamitsu. Kuraboshi looked at him and thought that Kagamitsu truly seemed to shine, making Kuraboshi feel as insignificant as an ant in comparison. Kagamitsu then introduced the other members of the aerial group. There were 2 archers, Yoshi and a girl named Becky. After them came Van, who used a long sword like Kagamitsu, and a spear user named Doraneko. Doraneko and Becky hesitated when they saw Kuraboshi wearing the mask. Kuraboshi bowed and introduced himself, then asked Kagamitsu whether everyone had chosen phobia. Kagamitsu asked what Kuraboshi meant and explained that they were simply reacting to the mask. He added that although he had heard rumors about Kuraboshi, seeing him for the first time was genuinely frightening. Kagamitsu continued by saying that Karaboshi's presence was extremely faint and almost impossible to notice when he was not wearing the mask, and that it was truly an incredible ability. Kuraboshi replied that Kagamitsu was mistaken, then removed the mask and explained that he had been born that way. Everyone was shocked when Kuraboshi completely disappeared from their perception. Kagamitsu suddenly began to cry, saying that his dream had always been to become a ninja, but his own presence was far too strong. Kuraboshi was taken aback by this reaction, and both of them felt a sense of mutual envy over each other's abilities. Becky then asked them to begin the meeting, and they all sat down as Kagamitsu explained that he wanted to participate in the Monster Parade expedition. Kuraboshi wondered what kind of monsters they were going to face. Kagamitsu replied that the parade mostly consisted of Slurpees, and that he had already fought one of them in a previous battle. He added that it would not be a problem, since they usually hunted on the 14th floor and that dealing with them would be easy. However, he mentioned that the dangerous one was the boss, a lizardman, which belonged to one of the rarest and highest demi-human species and normally appeared on the 30th floor. Kuraboshi was shocked to hear this and said that he could not see how he would be useful to them, but he asked again why they had chosen him. Kagamitsu replied that it was because Kuraboshi was the only one who could do it, explaining that Kuraboshi wanted to become famous and that he did not know any other fool who would deliberately rush into a monster parade. Kuraboshi was stunned by this remark, after which Kagamitsu revealed another reason. Currently, only beginner adventurers were available because the stronger ones had moved toward Shinjuku. He added that it would have a negative effect if they hired only beginners, so it was better to form a small group. He also stated that they did not need to win the battle at any cost. Becky and Doroneko then brought tea and snacks and added that they would retreat if the situation became worse, and that they could also carry out several assaults to gradually reduce the number of monsters. Karaboshi stated that he had hunted solo for a long time and wondered whether he would be able to cooperate with the group. When he was told not to worry, as they would support him with everything they had, Karaboshi became excited to fight alongside the rankers and confidently asked what he should do. The others were pleased, and Kagamitsu told him to deal with all the Slurpees, which left Karaboshi shocked. Karaboshi wondered what they meant by making him deal with everything alone. He learned from Kagamitsu that he would be tagging along with Yoshi, and that the two of them would handle the rest of the monster parade while the others fought the lizardmen. From this, Karaboshi understood that he was meant to act as a diversion. Kagamitsu continued by reminding him that, as stated earlier, they would support Karaboshi throughout the mission, and that their survival would largely depend on him. Karaboshi was shocked by this, realizing that although he was merely an adventurer who had barely reached the middle floors, Kagamitsu did not look down on him and treated him as an equal. He then understood why Kagamitsu was so famous and a top-ranked adventurer. Karaboshi also saw this as a chance to compare his own abilities with theirs, so he accepted the role. Kagamitsu went on to explain that they had only 7 days before the operation began, and that Karaboshi would need to get accustomed to monsters on the 10th floor. He added that starting the next day they would begin on the 8th floor, and even though it was not their main objective, they still had to take it seriously. After the meeting ended, Karaboshi went to meet Karin, and told her about the entire situation. He asked her to feel free to explore the dungeon whenever she wanted, explaining that he would not be able to accompany her. She thanked him, after which Karaboshi packed his belongings with Raya and left in his car. On the first floor of Chikano, the alien party had arrived, drawing the attention of onlookers, who wondered how deep they planned to go and whether they had fully recovered. Seeing that Becky and Doroneko were not with them, people questioned whether it was risky to proceed with only 3 members. Kagamitsu revealed that they had one more person, and Karaboshi finally appeared without wearing his mask, holding it in his hand instead. Everyone stared at him, which disappointed Karaboshi, prompting him to put the mask back on. Kagamitsu tried to console him by saying that he was envious of Karaboshi and wished he could switch places with him. Yoshi remarked that Karaboshi's presence seemed weaker when he was around Kagamitsu, and Van agreed. They then reached the boss of the 8th and 9th floors, and Karaboshi was confused by its small size. Kagamitsu asked whether Karaboshi wanted to fight it together, but Karaboshi replied that he only wanted to observe the battle for future reference. Kagamitsu agreed and effortlessly slashed the monster down so quickly that Karaboshi barely noticed. As more monsters appeared, Kagamitsu asked Yoshi and Van to defeat them as well. Karaboshi focused intensely on Kagamitsu, trying not to miss anything. Suddenly Kagamitsu cut down another monster, shocking Karaboshi with his incredible speed and advancement. At the same time, Van attacked the boss's weapon, while Yoshi fired an arrow before the boss could react. Kagamitsu then finished it off with his longsword. Kagamitsu asked Karaboshi what he thought of the fight, and Karaboshi responded by clapping and praising their performance. They continued moving forward, and when they reached a cliff-like area, they encountered a large number of monsters. Karaboshi wondered if this was the monster parade. Kagamitsu remarked that the number had increased compared to the last time. Karaboshi was shocked to see that there were around 200 monsters, and questioned whether he was expected to defeat all of them on his own. For a while he considered whether the dungeon was testing his strength or simply his sense of humor. He felt that it was nearly impossible, yet he was also confident that he would give it his all. Karaboshi signaled Kagamitsu to proceed, placing his trust in him, but Kagamitsu suddenly stopped, explaining that it would be dangerous if the monsters noticed them. Karaboshi asked what they should do next, and Kagamitsu told him to wait and observe. Yoshi then fired an arrow to distract some of the monsters. He explained that he would retrieve his arrows and slowly isolate the monsters for the group. Kagamitsu then told Karaboshi that it was his turn, and added that he should enjoy hunting them, warning him not to get defeated easily, as that would only complicate things. Karaboshi understood. As Karaboshi rushed forward, he noticed that most of the monsters were focused on Kagamitsu. He asked Raya for help, and declared that he would show what he was capable of, as he moved into the battle. While Karaboshi was fighting, Kagamitsu watched him closely, and was impressed, noting that it was the first time he had seen such a dagger fighting style. Van also found it fascinating, while Yoshi commented that dagger users usually followed a hit-and-run style, whereas Karaboshi fought mostly from the same position without losing speed. Van added that there were very few dagger users to compare with, but from what he could see, Karaboshi seemed quite skilled. Yoshi agreed, saying that Karaboshi had sharp eyes and was genuinely strong, and he was confident that Karaboshi had the potential to reach at least the 10th floor. However, Kagamitsu seemed to have something on his mind. Karaboshi then asked Yoshi how long he was supposed to continue. Yoshi replied that it took about 1 minute to kill a single monster. Van commented that at this rate it would never be finished. Kagamitsu agreed, stating that ideally it should take 5 seconds and that Karaboshi was making too many unnecessary movements. Yoshi wondered what they should do, fearing that Karaboshi would die if things continued at that pace. Kagamitsu questioned whether he had chosen the wrong person, and thought that he might have needed to investigate more. Suddenly Karaboshi dropped to his knees. The three of them were shocked, wondering if this was due to sickness, though it seemed too early for that. They suspected that Karaboshi's stamina had been depleted, and prepared to step in to help him. However, to their surprise, Karaboshi suddenly lunged forward, striking back and defeating 3 monsters at once. He then turned to Yoshi and asked him to bring the next wave. Yoshi agreed, and after some time they began to wonder how much longer Karaboshi could keep going. Karaboshi had already defeated many monsters, so many that they questioned how many he had taken down by then. Kagamitsu called out to Karaboshi, telling him that it was enough, but Karaboshi asked for more. As more monsters came, Karaboshi continued defeating them all. He then turned to Kagamitsu with a smile and asked for more again. Kagamitsu was shocked to see that Karaboshi was actually enjoying it. He instructed Yoshi to lure even more monsters until Karaboshi collapsed. Van and Yoshi were stunned and hesitated, but Kagamitsu insisted. Yoshi finally agreed and continued luring the monsters. They were astonished to see that Karaboshi's speed was increasing, and that he was now defeating monsters in just 15 seconds. They were confused about how Karaboshi was able to do this, as it did not seem normal, especially to Van. Kagamitsu then remarked that it might be because Karaboshi had begun to unlock the key to their plan. After some time, Karaboshi thought he saw a light in the darkness and wondered what it was. It seemed as though he could reach it, and it felt as if the light was coming closer. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and found himself lying on the ground, with Kagamitsu looking down at him and asking how he felt. Startled, Karaboshi sat up and Kagamitsu made him drink some water, explaining that Karaboshi had collapsed in the middle of the battle. Karaboshi apologized, saying that he had never fainted during a fight before, and that until now he had always had his teammates adjust the combat pace for him. Kagamitsu wondered why Karaboshi still wanted to push himself alone, pointing out that he could have died. Karaboshi replied that he had been told the same thing before. Kagamitsu then continued, asking what Karaboshi thought now that they had reached this stage. Karaboshi said that although he had the stamina to fight heavy opponents, he struggled at first because of the range of his weapon. Van and Yoshi remarked that Karaboshi had fought extremely well. Karaboshi added that after observing how others fought, he realized he needed to adapt everything to his own style. He also mentioned that when he focused on that light, he felt something different. Kagamitsu then asked whether they should head back. Karaboshi asked about the time, and Kagamitsu replied that it was exactly 2 o'clock. Karaboshi then said that he wanted to continue hunting for a while longer, and added that if it was troublesome he could do it alone. Kagamitsu refused, saying that it was fine, and that if Karaboshi was going to continue, he would go with him. Van commented that Karaboshi was truly crazy, while Yoshi added that he was glad Karaboshi was friendly with them. After that, stories about Karaboshi began to spread everywhere. People were shocked by his fighting style, and by how hard he pushed himself. They were astonished to learn that Karaboshi had rested only once, when he collapsed from exhaustion. Everyone was stunned to hear that Karaboshi had killed over 200 monsters, while even Kagamitsu's full team had managed only 150. Many were left confused, wondering just who Karaboshi really was. After 2 days, Karaboshi finally reached the decisive battle, having grown accustomed to fighting over the previous days. He was aware that he needed to be careful, as many eyes would be on him during the battle, and any sudden change in his basic skills would surely be noticed. He was also curious about divine protection, so he turned to Ria and asked whether he could spend his remaining 2 points on it. She agreed, and once it was done, Karaboshi learned about the guardian deity of underground treasure. Ptah was revealed to be the Egyptian god of creation, a craftsman deity worshipped in ancient Egypt. Since he was often depicted in green, he was also believed to be associated with plants, and underground treasure was considered a resource closely tied to plant life. From this, Karaboshi concluded that the god assigned to someone's divine protection was related to that person's traits. He felt as though he was sensing the presence of something overwhelming and thought that it was almost unbelievable. He reasoned that if his clothes were influenced by a divine protection god who could hide one's presence, then once he reached the maximum level, no one would be able to tell whether he was even there. He remarked that there could hardly be a god more cruel than that. Karaboshi then asked Rhea how she felt about her skills leveling up, and suggested that she try them out. She nodded in response, so Karaboshi pointed out a pair of goblins and asked her to test her abilities on them. Rhea threw a stone, defeating both goblins in a single strike. This shocked Karaboshi, as the speed had not increased significantly, yet the power was remarkable. He then realized that this improvement would greatly increase their chances of survival in the monster parade battle, as long as he did not make any mistakes. Finally, the day of the battle arrived, and Karaboshi went to meet Kagamitsu's party. Noticing that several pieces of luggage were already there, he wondered about them, and Kagamitsu explained that once they reached the destination, the luggage would be used by them. From this, Karaboshi understood that Becky and Doroneko were meant to be secret weapons against aerial monsters, and he felt that their aura was very different, giving the situation the weight of a decisive battle. They eventually reached the dungeon, and when Kagamitsu opened one of the containers, Karaboshi saw that it contained slimy eels. Kagamitsu confirmed this and explained that they would first place them around the entrance gate, so that if the escape route was blocked, it would be game over for them. He added that the remaining eels would be laid out on the ground in a line, forming a funnel shape to guide the monsters into a narrow path. Karaboshi understood that this would allow him to fight without being surrounded, though he still wondered whether everything would go smoothly. He then asked Kagamitsu how they planned to lure the monster parade to that location. Kagamitsu explained that he did not possess a strong presence, so if he attacked, the monsters would follow him, while others with weaker presence might go unnoticed and wander elsewhere. He then showed Karaboshi an object, which Karaboshi recognized as a pyoko, and understood that it would be used to lure the monsters. However, Karaboshi wondered who would lure the boss, and Kagamitsu took that responsibility upon himself. Karaboshi agreed, noting the strong confidence on Kagamitsu's face. After they finished placing the eels, Kagamitsu was asked how long it would take for them to be absorbed by the dungeon. He explained that it would take about 3 hours, adding that other adventurers had already experimented with this and carefully measured the time, so there was no mistake. Karaboshi realized that this meant they had to clear the monster parade within 3 hours. Knowing that there were around 500 monsters, he questioned whether they could realistically kill 2 or 3 monsters per minute. He wondered if the dungeon expected them to fight faster, simply because dying would save time. He then asked Kagamitsu whether he thought he could draw the boss far enough away from the area. Kagamitsu replied that he believed it was possible. They then noticed that Ria looked unusually serious, which made the others wonder why. Yoshi explained that Ria's flowers could fire potatoes. Doroneko asked if he meant fire potatoes, and Yoshi confirmed it, adding that it would be best if the boss were taken far away so that Ria's attacks would not reach it. Kagamitsu agreed, and then stood up asking if everyone was ready. He admitted that they were short on manpower to face the monster parade, and to make matters worse there would also be a boss. He said that in truth he would have preferred more people, but as he had mentioned before, carelessly increasing their numbers could be dangerous. Therefore, it would have to be the 6 of them. He told everyone to be proud of themselves, and added that even if things did not go as planned, it would still be fine. He concluded by saying that they would try as many times as necessary, and even if they failed, as long as they managed to return alive, it would be enough. He told everyone that they must survive and not die, adding that the hometowns of the brave adventurers who had gone to recapture Shinjuku would be protected by them. With that, they all rushed into battle against the monster parade. Kagamitsu entrusted the situation to Karaboshi, and Karaboshi soon noticed that a few monsters were also approaching him to attack. Suddenly the Pyoko rose up, leaving everyone confused. Yoshi asked Karaboshi what had happened, and Karaboshi replied that the Pyoko had broken. As the monsters continued to approach, Karaboshi stated that they had no other choice but to fight them. Yoshi also prepared himself to join the fight. Rhea went forward to strike the monsters as well and ended up killing many of them. Yoshi was shocked to witness such power from Rhea. Zote looked at the monsters and said that it was now time to take over. He asked Yoshi for cover and charged straight at the monsters. Yoshi realized that it was taking around 5 seconds to defeat a single monster and wondered how long it would last, and how many monsters Karaboshi must have killed. Karaboshi even picked up a spear and threw it at the monsters to kill them, while wondering how far he could push his own body. After a long fight, Karaboshi finally collapsed, but he had finished all the enemies. There was still no sign of Yoshi, so he assumed that Yoshi must have gone ahead to help Kagamitsu. He saw Rhea drinking water, and Karaboshi said that it would help her recover. Meanwhile, the slimy eels began to be absorbed into the dungeon, making Karaboshi wonder if 3 hours had already passed, and if the others had been fighting the lizardmen for that long, which was not a good sign. He decided that he should go and check on them. When Karaboshi arrived there, he found everyone struggling in battle. While Van was lying on the ground heavily injured, Karaboshi was shocked to see the lizard woman. Yoshi then called Becky and Doroneko, and the 3 of them attacked the lizardman together. Karaboshi was surprised by their fighting style, but the lizardman blocked their attack easily, and struck Doroneko with his tail. As it was about to attack her with its spear, Kagamitsu intervened and blocked the strike. Although Kagamitsu tried to counterattack with all his strength, he could not leave even a scratch on the lizardman. Karaboshi realized that it was not the time to stand back and watch. He attempted to use a skill, but discovered a skill named Present, which confused him. For now he understood that they only needed to increase Kagamitsu's chances of survival. As he thought it through, he realized that making the fight easier for Kagamitsu was the priority. He then noticed that his stealth skill had increased from level 2 to level 3, but he reminded himself that it was not the time to be distracted by that. Calming himself, he carefully considered what he could do with the 5 skill points, knowing that even if he used all of them, he still could not fight the enemy at his current level. He understood that even after raising several of Kagamitsu's skills, Kagamitsu's divine protection remained at level 1. However, race rowing ability had improved remarkably, becoming something truly impressive in her case. It occurred to him that the divine protection might be far more effective than he had imagined, and that even a single point could mean the difference between life and death when there was no room for failure. He reasoned that there would be no harm in giving it a try. However, he felt confused about his skills and realized that the situation was bad, as he no longer knew how to deal with everything properly. He forced himself to calm down, telling himself that it was not the time to worry about all that. Just as he was about to act, he noticed that the name of a god was currently shining. On the other hand, Kagamitsu felt that the fight was extremely difficult. He realized that he had not been able to leave even a scratch on the lizardman, and wondered if the gap between them was truly that large. He worried about what had happened to Dorineko and Van, and questioned whether he was the only one still able to fight. He wondered how long he could continue like this, and felt that death was inevitable. Still, he forced himself to stand up, declaring that he did not want to die, and that he would not let his friends die either. With no other choice, he stood up to fight the lizardman, sensing that he had not felt this way since a certain moment in his past. He then remembered an incident from a few years ago, when he had been trying to sneak away but noticed some people following him. When he asked them why, they told him that he stood out too much and invited him to join their circle. One of them in particular said that she wanted to go to Gokani with him that night, and added that it would be a waste not to, given how much he stood out. He had left them behind, and while standing alone afterward, he had thought that he never wanted to stand out, which was the reason he had left his hometown. However, that decision had backfired, as all he had wanted was to live like a ninja, lurking in the shadows. Later, while standing on a bridge, he had witnessed giant bugs attacking humans, as if it were a scene from a movie. He had been confused and horrified by the sight of human corpses, and had started running, telling himself that he did not want to stand out even in such a situation. He had tried to escape but found himself wondering where to go, as every area was filling with monsters killing people. He attempted to hide, believing that he needed to gather information about what was happening. After some time, he noticed a child about to be attacked by a monster. Before he could react properly, he saw even more people being killed right in front of his eyes. He tried to help along with others by throwing objects at the monsters, and for a moment he felt happy. However, when a wolf monster was about to attack the people, Kagamitsu deliberately called out to it, forcing it to change its target to him. As the monsters chased him, he ran, until someone suddenly called out to him from the first floor of a house and threw a hammer near him. It was a close call, and he barely managed to dodge it. The woman shouted at him to pick up the hammer and start fighting the monsters. Kagamitsu replied that it was impossible for him. She yelled back that if he did not kill them, they would kill him instead, and therefore he had no choice but to fight. Kagamitsu was confused about why the woman had been so confident in him. Suddenly he noticed a monster jumping closer to her. He lured it away, and as it approached him, he realized that it felt just like before, making him wonder if everything was happening because of his presence. When the monster leapt to strike him, he swung his hammer to counter it. He stopped dwelling on the past, realizing that the world had changed since that day and had become what it now was. Although Kagamitsu hated this reality, he could not escape it, and when he realized that his presence had a purpose, he made up his mind and prepared himself to sacrifice his life to protect those who were important to him. He then shouted for everyone to run away while he distracted the enemy, before charging forward to attack the lizardmen. As he charged forward to attack, he suddenly noticed arrows embedded in the lizardman's eye. Kagamitsu was shocked, as it was the first time the creature had been injured. He wondered who had fired them, but more importantly, he realized that everyone else needed to retreat immediately. Seeing an opening, Kagamitsu moved in to slash, determined not to let the creature attack his companions. He was certain that someone was attacking the lizardman from behind, since his own attacks had been ineffective so far. He began taunting the creature while striking it, believing that by manipulating its aggression, he could keep it focused on himself, while the unseen attacker continued their assault from behind. Each blow grew heavier, and Kagamitsu found it increasingly difficult to block them. He thought that they needed to hurry, as the lizardman clearly wanted to knock down the one attacking it from behind, yet it could not afford to ignore Kagamitsu. Suddenly the lizardman struck him with its tail, and knocked him to the ground. As Kagamitsu struggled to get up, he realized that he could no longer keep the creature occupied, and had no idea who the attacker was, though he hoped that person would act quickly. Meanwhile, Karaboshi charged forward with his dagger and attempted to slash the lizardman, only to find that it was extremely tough. His attacks could not pierce it, and even Ria's full power was only able to peel its skin slightly. He realized that he had to find another way. The lizardman lashed out at Karaboshi with its tail, but Karaboshi dodged the attack. When it struck again with its spear, it managed to leave only a small scratch on Karaboshi's face. Unable to focus properly at first, Karaboshi then noticed a scratch on the lizardman's tail. As he continued slashing, he realized that whenever he attacked, a certain spot would shine briefly. It was the same light he had seen in previous battles, though it differed for each opponent. Karaboshi thought it was almost considerate of his enemies to politely show him where they wanted to die. He understood that if he struck those glowing spots precisely, his enemy would collapse. Realizing that he needed to observe carefully without being noticed, Karaboshi focused and managed to cut deeply into the lizardman's tail. The creature screamed loudly and turned to attack him. Karaboshi then shouted to Kagamitsu to aim for its neck. Kagamitsu followed his instruction and struck, severing its head. At last, the lizardman was defeated. Overcome with emotion, Kagamitsu cried out loudly in victory. Moments later, Karaboshi suddenly collapsed, having realized that he had gained a new skill as well. After everything was over, the group went to a bar to celebrate. Yoshi said that he had not understood what had been happening, eat the time and admitted that he had been terrified. Akane asked what the decisive factor had been. Kagamitsu replied that he was not entirely sure, but when the lizardman's tail had been cut off, Karaboshi had instructed him to aim for the neck. They expressed their confusion and remarked that Karaboshi had also been the one who destroyed the horde of monsters earlier. Everyone praised Karaboshi and wondered how he had known that the lizardman's neck was its weak point. Karaboshi hesitated to answer. At that moment, a woman arrived with food and Kagamitsu said that he had not ordered it. She explained that their manager was a fan of their party and that the food was on the house. They encouraged Karaboshi to drink as much as he wanted, and soon the glasses were constantly being refilled as they enjoyed the celebration. However, they could no longer see Karaboshi, as he was not wearing his mask, and the guests assumed that he had gone to the restroom. When they later stepped outside, they wondered whether Karaboshi was coming with them. They questioned where he had gone, noting that he seemed to have vanished halfway through. Kagamitsu suggested that Karaboshi must have been tired, and decided to go home early. Yet in truth, Karaboshi was still with them. As they all left, they mentioned that they should drink again the next day. Karaboshi remained standing there, thinking about why God had done such things to him. He walked some distance away and began crying loudly, realizing that even though he had been right in front of everyone, his existence was fading more and more. He thought that it would have been fine if he had been dealing with monsters, as that would have made them easier to defeat, but dealing with humans felt deeply unfair to him. He then recalled that it also had something to do with protection, as his body was completely covered by clothes and remained unseen. He realized that this resembled the one who overthrew enemies while remaining hidden from Sig's sight. Karaboshi understood that this referred to a pillar god from ancient Egyptian mythology. He reasoned that if this was the same god who possessed the ability to detect weak points, then it must be the so-called overthrowing god. However, as Karaboshi tried to remember more, he recalled that the god was also said to emit rays of light from his eyes, which clearly was not possible in his case. This made him question what kind of adventurer he truly was. The scene shifted to Karan, who was walking alone near the dungeon. She noticed that the weather outside was completely different from inside, and wondered how many days had passed since Karaboshi had left after accepting that request. She was aware that netizens were making a huge fuss about the monster parade, and was certain that they were referring to Karaboshi, the masked individual who had saved Kagamitsu's life. No one could believe that he had defeated the boss using the weakest weapon, a dagger, which even Kagamitsu had struggled to handle. However, Karan firmly believed that if it truly had been Karaboshi, then such a feat was entirely possible. She also reflected that she needed to strengthen her divine protection and catch up to him as soon as possible. That was why she had decided to level up further and sell the materials herself in order to upgrade her equipment. With that intention, she went to a store to sell the items, where she saw Akane sitting inside and cooling herself with a hand fan. Akane addressed her by calling her Karaboshi's friend. Karan realized that Akane still did not remember her name and remarked that it was extremely hot and that she wished to sell something. When Karan took out the item, Akane wondered whether she had obtained it on her own. Karan confirmed this, and mentioned that she had been under the impression that Akane thought she merely followed Karaboshi around doing nothing except drinking juice behind him. Karan became irritated, questioning what Akane was even implying. Akane replied that she had meant exactly what she had said, and asked whether Karan herself did not think it was time to quit. She then questioned whether Karan was Karaboshi's girlfriend. Karan became flustered and clarified that Akane had misunderstood her. Akane then asked whether they were teammates, and when Karan hesitated, Akane assumed that Karan herself was unsure. Akane went on to explain that Karaboshi was growing at an abnormal rate and possessed extremely high hunting potential. She stated with certainty that he would become much stronger in the future and that circumstances would soon change. She then asked whether Karan had ever considered the possibility that she might eventually become nothing more than a burden to him. Akane assumed that Karan had already thought about it, and warned her that it was time to decide what she would do from that point onward. Karan became furious and shouted that Akane had no right to say such things. Overwhelmed with emotion, she cried out and slammed her hand on the table, breaking it. Akane was enraged by this action. Karan then realized that her magic had activated outside the dungeon, and wondered whether it was due to her recent level up or the effect of divine protection. Akane called out to her, startling Karan. Crying, Akane demanded to know what Karan had done and ordered her to leave immediately, declaring that they would settle this with a duel in which she would wash away the pain of losing her precious Mitsuru table. They stepped outside into the bright sunlight. Although Karan apologized repeatedly, Akane refused to listen, stating that no apology could bring Mitsuru back. She further accused Karan of hesitating, and questioned whether she still intended to rely on Karaboshi. When Karan denied it, Akane challenged her to attack with everything she had, declaring that if Akane won, Karan would have to buy her a top-class Tangarian box. Karan thought that Akane was truly a powerful person, and recalled researching her online out of curiosity. She remembered that Akane was a famous fighting clerk who had discovered and trained countless rookies in the past, raising them to a level comparable to ranked adventurers. Karan realized that this was her chance to prove her ability and earn Akane's acknowledgement. She charged forward, but wondered why her sapling skill only restored health. She struck Akane with enough force to knock her down, then immediately rushed to check on her, worried about whether Akane was hurt, and apologizing for using too much power. Akane, however, was irritated, and Karan only then felt relief upon confirming that Akane was still alive. Akane shouted that she could not believe Karan had used a flying tool despite possessing a proper weapon, declaring that it was a foul tool and would not be counted. She then grabbed Karan's hand and told her to come along. Karan wondered where they were going, to which Akane replied that they were heading into the dungeon for a hunting showdown. Akane appeared extremely excited, and Karan thought that even after taking a direct hit, Akane was completely fine. She realized that Akane was far stronger than she was. Before entering the dungeon, Akane asked whether the ability Karan had used was magic, and questioned whether Karan intended to support Kuraboshi using that power. She added that if that was truly the case, she would show Karan a bit of her own strength, and might even offer advice to help her grow stronger. Karan became emotional upon hearing this and realized that she might finally be acknowledged by Akane. She agreed and stated that she would take responsibility for Akane's care. Meanwhile, Kuraboshi finally returned to his house feeling completely relaxed. As he took Ria out, he reflected that although it had required considerable effort, he had been introduced on Kagamitsu's blog, and his number of followers had increased by 5. He felt that a major push to boost his online presence had begun. Upon reaching the dungeon entrance, he wondered whether Karan was diving that day, and considered following her inside. However, before doing so, he decided to visit Akane's shop, thinking that the heat was unbearable and that he had nothing to shield himself from the sun. When he arrived, he found the store closed and opened the door to check whether Karan was inside. To his surprise, he discovered both Karan and Akane sitting there, drenched in sweat, and wondered what could have happened to the two of them. Kuraboshi turned toward Karan and asked what was wrong. Karan directly asked whether he had become stronger. Kuraboshi felt happy, realizing that she could tell just by looking at him. Karan was about to mention what had happened on the 10th floor of the garage, but Akane suddenly stopped her, asking her not to tell him because she did not want to recall those events. Kuraboshi stated that he had no idea what they were talking about, and decided that he would simply go and see it for himself. As he started heading inside, both Karan and Akane followed him, which confused Kuraboshi. Akane told him not to mind it, and mentioned that Karan's shoulder was slipping. As they went downstairs, Kuraboshi thought that while he had been away, the two of them had grown quite close. The conversation then shifted to equipment. Akane explained that the equipment was Banma made, and that she was an Ichibishi employee. She revealed that she had no other choice because weapons like those were no longer manufactured. Kuraboshi wondered how efficient it was, and Akane replied that it was a tonfa integrated with both offensive and defensive capabilities, equipped with jet engine blades. She explained its features in detail, and Kuraboshi understood that it lived up to expectations. He also thought that it was only natural for a brand with such a large fanbase. Akane then pointed out that Kuraboshi himself was wearing something unusual, and asked whether it was defensive armor made from lizardman materials. Kuraboshi commented that Akane was extremely knowledgeable. She explained that the armor provided considerable resistance against slashing attacks while still being cloth-type equipment, warning him to be cautious of blunt attacks. She then asked whether he wanted a detailed appraisal, but Kuraboshi declined, stating that he preferred to learn about it through actual use. Akane asked whether the equipment had been dropped by a boss. Kuraboshi confirmed that it was, explaining that he was the only one among the group who could equip it, which was why he had taken it. Akane then commented on his mask, feathers, potatoes, and fish scales, wondering what exactly he was trying to become. Kuraboshi replied that it was all for ranking up, and then asked why they had come to the dungeon earlier that day. Both Karan and Akane hesitated. Suddenly, Akane grabbed Karan's hand and stated that it was because the two of them had fought the other day. She admitted that she had lost the fight because she had been hit by one of Karan's spells. Kuraboshi was shocked to learn that Karan was capable of using magic. Akane further explained that this was the reason they had decided to hold a hunting competition. Kuraboshi wondered why they would start something like that. Akane replied that it was because she had decided to keep an eye on Karan. Kuraboshi was completely confused when Akane revealed that Karan was a sponsor candidate for Ichibishi. He was shaken by the shocking news and thought that a non-ranker adventurer signing a contract with a company was a highly suspicious situation. He then asked whether this decision was related to Karan's use of magic. Akane immediately confirmed it, and Kuraboshi understood that nothing harmful would happen to Karan since Akane herself was involved in supporting her. Though frustrated, he accepted it as something that could not be helped, and silently appreciated Karan's efforts. Karan began to cry and apologized, saying that Kuraboshi had always helped her, yet she was now moving forward on her own like this. Karaboshi reassured her not to worry, and then turned to Akane, asking whether there was any way she could help him as well. Akane bluntly refused, remarking that in Karaboshi's case it would be better to put his face on a balloon and send it far away. Karaboshi felt hurt upon hearing such a remark. They eventually reached the 10th floor, where Karaboshi asked whether the two of them were not coming along. Both Karan and Akane hesitated, pushing each other forward and insisting the other go first. Karaboshi became increasingly confused by their behavior. Suddenly a giant earthworm appeared in front of Karaboshi, causing both Karan and Akane to scream loudly. However, Karaboshi became excited, and even commented that it looked cute. He slashed at it while noting that blunt attacks were unnecessary, since its skin was not hard but rather quite elastic. The two of them began crying, wondering whether it was because they were terrified. More earthworms started approaching, and Karaboshi grew annoyed, realizing that he would have to protect them. All of a sudden, a lightning attack struck and killed the worms, and it was revealed that Karan had cast the spell. However, she collapsed due to overexertion. After some time, while resting with her head on Akane's lap, Karan regained consciousness. Karaboshi noticed a smoky smell in the air, and Akane explained that something was burning. Karaboshi wondered why Akane cared about his personal tastes, then praised Karan, telling her that her magic had been incredible. Karan was shocked by the compliment, and with a trembling body, asked whether they were going to eat the worm. Karaboshi reassured her by explaining that it was not a dungeon earthworm, but Lutz, a type of sea creature. Karaboshi asked Karan to look at the food and smell it first, then offered her some to eat. Karan hesitated, but Karaboshi told her that it was the greatest contribution she had made. She was shocked by his words. Akane became annoyed and wondered about her own share. Karan seemed genuinely worried about eating it, while Akane kept asking for some as well. However, Karaboshi replied that Akane had not done anything during the battle, and questioned why she had allowed her head to get bitten in the first place despite being so strong. Akane shouted that it had not been intentional and explained that she was not good at dealing with bugs. They then watched Karen eat, and she appeared very happy. Akane started crying because she also wanted to eat the food, but Karaboshi continued to refuse, stating that it was not meant for those who had not contributed. The next day when they came to check on her, Karaboshi asked Karen whether what she had used the previous day was thunder magic. Karen guessed that it was, and Karaboshi said that since she had been able to use it, it must have been possible for her. Karen explained that ever since the divine protection had appeared, she somehow felt capable of using such magic. Karaboshi was pleased to hear this. He then asked why Karen had shown her magic only to Akane. Karen replied that it was a secret between the two of them, and that she would not share it with him. Karaboshi understood her position and thought that, although they were a team, it was not right to pry into such matters. Later Karaboshi noticed an update and realized that the divine protection had increased. He concluded that strengthening divine protection made them stronger, and asked Karen if she wanted to test it. She initially agreed, but then asked him to leave it as it was. When Karaboshi asked for her reason, she explained that she wanted to increase her level a little more using her own strength. She believed that without personal effort, she would never understand how difficult it was to gain power, and that relying too much on divine protection would make her complacent and reduce her effort in the future. Karaboshi quietly thought that the gods were surprisingly generous, yet somehow still found a way to make growth feel painful. Karaboshi agreed with her reasoning, and reflected that the desire to become strong should not be suppressed, as it was foolish to do so. He believed that such desire became empowering when someone was pushed into a corner or faced failure. Finally, Karaboshi suddenly brought up the idea of testing her resolve immediately. Frightened by this, Karan became scared, burst into tears and ran away. Karaboshi mentioned that Karan had understood the technique and had even defeated the floor boss. Karan pointed out that the boss had actually been defeated by Karaboshi with a single slash. She added that the boss was about 1 meter tall and wondered how Karaboshi had managed to cut it down using just a dagger. She asked whether it was some kind of new skill. Karaboshi denied this and explained that it had only been a normal attack, comparing it to the way bamboo splits. Karan was shocked that such a result could come from a normal attack. Karaboshi understood that this was due to exploiting the enemy's weakness, which had manifested because of divine protection. He felt as though he was no longer human anymore. He reflected that abilities like flying without relying on skills might support Karan's point, but he also admitted that he did not truly understand the basics of swordsmanship, and had likely been making many useless movements without realizing it. While they were walking, Karaboshi mentioned that he might need to look for a guru. Karan was confused and wondered whether he actually planned to attend training. Karaboshi thought that if he started going there, she would end up diving solo again. Karan remarked that even if he went to a dojo, he might not receive much attention. Karaboshi then realized what she meant, and when he looked at her, she explained that there were many things they could learn just by going to a dojo. She added that even if he was not training directly, he could simply watch and steal techniques. Karaboshi commented that she was truly a genius. That night Karaboshi searched through his memories and realized that although he had watched similar movements long ago, it was only now, thanks to his imitation skill, that he could truly see and understand them. He practiced using his dagger, realizing that he first needed to grip it properly and relax his hand. He noted that his index finger had to be positioned correctly, or it could be injured. As he moved the dagger, he discovered that grip strength was the key. He also realized that by increasing the range of motion, the speed naturally increased as well. Though the change was subtle, and the sound slightly different, he knew he still had a long way to go. He understood that master swordsmen followed a natural flow, allowing them to avoid using unnecessary strength. After adjusting his breathing, Karaboshi struck the floor in a single motion and broke it. He was shocked by the result. The scene then shifted to a girl swinging her sword while wondering where Karaboshi was. Karaboshi entered the dungeon alone, focusing carefully on the movement of his hands and feet. Suddenly he slashed at a centipede, cutting it cleanly in half. Although the result felt good, he realized it was still not enough. He understood that he needed to fully get the hang of it, and had no choice but to keep practicing until it became natural. He continued slashing through centipedes, and after some time, when he finally came out of the dungeon, he noticed how bright it was outside. He realized that morning had already arrived, and that he had spent the entire night hunting. Afterward he checked his stats and found that several values had increased. He reflected that there were two conditions required for an increase. The first was acquiring experience points, and the second was actively using the skill one wanted to improve. On the other hand, if someone did not wish to level up a particular skill, they simply had to avoid using it frequently. Karaboshi decided to test this theory for himself. He planned to distribute his points after getting some sleep. However, he ended up oversleeping. When he finally woke up, it was Karan who had woken him. After that, the two of them returned to the dungeon to continue exploring and to search for the boss of the 11th floor, which consisted of bears. They managed to defeat the boss together. Excited by their success, Karaboshi eagerly moved on to explore the 12th floor, with Karan following closely behind. As they reached the 12th floor, Karaboshi wondered whether it would be another meadow. Karan noticed that the grass there was yellow in color. Karaboshi sensed that something was wrong with Rhea, as he had never seen her react that way before, so he decided to expand his detection range. After detecting something unusual, he told Karan that they should retreat. However, before they could move, they suddenly heard a sound, and a large number of insects surrounded them. Karaboshi identified them as rice grasshoppers, and wondered whether Rhea was disturbed because they were her natural enemies. He also mentioned that rice grasshoppers tasted like shrimp, and felt tempted to eat them. Karan was shocked by his reaction. They attempted to fight, but the number of grasshoppers was overwhelming, so Karaboshi told Karan that they should retreat. As they were leaving, Karaboshi and Karan noticed their group, and wondered whether they were trying to fight something. Karaboshi understood the situation and told Rhea and Karan that he would expend all his strength to defeat the leader. He revealed that the grasshoppers were targeting the rice plants. He then asked the silver rice to wait for him, promising that he would save them. Karan was shocked by what he said. After everything was over, they cooked food at Karaboshi's house. Karan thanked him, saying that the food was delicious. Karaboshi replied that it was nothing, and explained that it had been a long time since he had eaten rice himself, which was why he had become so excited. He then asked whether she wanted him to drop her at the hotel. Karan revealed that she was thinking of going hunting instead. Karaboshi guessed that she might head to the 8th floor for the melons, and advised her not to push herself too hard. Karan left while thinking that Karaboshi had grown stronger again. She believed that their levels had come a little closer, but she also feared that he would soon leave her behind, as he had been leveling up rapidly during the raid. She thought that he would continue to grow stronger. Wanting to be of help to him, she decided to dive into the dungeon alone at night, believing that her current efforts were not enough. She suddenly slapped herself, thinking that it was not good to be pessimistic. She reminded herself that her goal had not changed, and that she needed to catch up to Karaboshi. When she arrived at the worm floor, she resolved to defeat the monsters there to level up. However, she soon noticed something unusual, and wondered what it could be. Meanwhile, Karaboshi continued cutting down centipedes, feeling that he was finally getting the hang of it. He threw his dagger at one of them, and discovered that it was a baby centipede. He decided to hunt it, but it resisted. Karaboshi realized that it had a tough shell and remarkable speed. Karaboshi wondered whether the centipede was some kind of rare species and began chasing it. When he closed the distance and was about to strike, Rhea suddenly intervened and stopped him, saving the centipede. Karaboshi was confused at first, but then stopped himself, saying that he would let Rhea handle it. After realizing that Rhea intended to take care of the centipede, Karaboshi hesitated for a moment, and then asked the creature whether it was willing to join them. He admitted that he was not sure how it would respond, but said that they would welcome it if it chose to join them, as they could become friends. The centipede crawled onto Karaboshi, which made him genuinely happy. When Karaboshi checked its status, he discovered that it was very strong, had high initial values, and possessed several skills he had never seen before. While thinking of a suitable name, the centipede lightly bit him. Taking that as a sign, Karaboshi decided to name it Esta, inspired by Vesta, the goddess of the earth in Roman mythology. Meanwhile, Akane stepped out of her shop and noticed that the weather was unusually clear and beautiful. Suddenly she heard a voice remark that it was not as beautiful as she was. She turned around and saw a Death Eater insect, which terrified her. She thought that if even a single Death Eater insect were present among the monsters, even a veteran team could be annihilated in no time. Alarmed, she rushed off, wondering why such a creature was there. Akane hurried to Karaboshi's place and knocked on his door, asking him to wake up. When Karaboshi came out, confused about what had happened so early in the morning, she told him to look at the Death Eater insect, warning that its presence was extremely dangerous. Karaboshi calmly replied that it was his friend, and explained that it was a very useful insect that helped with pest control. He also added that it was Ria's favorite. He reasoned that since rice grasshoppers were Ria's natural enemies, they had become the insect's preferred food. Akane was left completely shocked when Karaboshi concluded that their interests were perfectly aligned. When Karen returned, she was shocked to see a strange bug in Karaboshi's hand and wondered what had happened. Karaboshi replied that he had recruited a new team member, Esta, and explained that it was a rare species meant to protect the house. Suddenly, Karaboshi grew both shocked and excited, and asked whether she thought it might have been a silver wolf guarding his home. He remarked that having a silver wolf would be extremely cool, though it would attract too much attention. He added that for house protection, something like a centipede would actually be more practical. Karaboshi concluded that a centipede was ideal, since burglars could survive being bitten by a wolf, but not the memory of finding that crawling toward them in the dark. Karen thought that Karaboshi truly wanted a wolf, while Karaboshi himself mused that instead of a dog or a cat, a centipede made more sense. Karen told him that whenever she took her eyes off him for even a moment, he ended up doing something outrageous. After that, the two of them went to the 14th floor of the garage dungeon. Karaboshi noticed that Karen's divine protection had increased significantly and concluded that it must have been because they had defeated the boss of the 13th floor. He wondered whether Karen had finally grown curious about the name of the god protecting her. He then asked whether it was time to reallocate her points, but she refused, saying that she still wanted to give her best effort. Karaboshi agreed and warned her to be careful, as there were many traps ahead. As they moved forward, Karaboshi realized that there was water on the floor, which suggested that aquatic monsters might appear. He speculated that they could encounter fish or frogs, and soon after, he discovered a monster. He became excited when he saw that it was a slimy eel that looked somewhat unusual. Karaboshi used his dagger to slash it down, and after collecting several of them, he expressed that he really wanted to eat them. As a result, they decided to have a barbecue in front of Akane's shop, which greatly angered her. Karaboshi told her that she would get a share as well. She simply thanked him for it. Later, Karaboshi asked whether she had discovered anything about the boss drop they had obtained on the 14th floor. While holding a bowl of food, she revealed that, based on her observations, it was a replica of an eel that possessed strong anti-monster properties. Though it was less effective than the original, Karaboshi thought it was still good and decided to give it to Karen, but she refused. Karaboshi wondered why she was doing so, and she merely glared at him and said that she did not need it. Karaboshi then proceeded to feed Esta and Ria as well. After everything was settled, Karaboshi and Karen moved on to the 15th floor. They found that the air there was very dry, and that the area was a vast plain that felt like grassland. Suddenly, they both sensed a rumbling sound, and Karaboshi told her that it was a tremor, recalling that same sensation from before. Soon, they noticed a weary wolf appearing in front of them. It reminded Karaboshi of the past, when he had not wanted to fight such a creature before. However, he felt that things were different now, and excitement surged within him. Thinking that he wanted to test how much he had grown since that time, and how much the gap between them had closed, he rushed forward to attack. Karaboshi felt genuinely glad that the very wolf had appeared, as it gave him a chance to test his abilities. While he was fighting, Karen was stunned by the sight and shocked to see that Karaboshi was actually excited about the battle. Karaboshi slashed at the wolf, and suddenly Karen called out to him and launched a lightning attack at the creature. Karaboshi realized that the lightning alone would not be effective, but it created an opening for him. Karen grew worried that she could not hit the wolf repeatedly because its movements were extremely fast. Karaboshi called out to her, telling her that he would distract the wolf and that she should calm herself and try attacking again. She agreed and began observing the wolf's movements more carefully. Karaboshi soon noticed the creature's weak point and struck it, while Rhea also joined in and attacked the wolf. Eventually, they severed the wolf's arms, and with another lightning strike from Karen, they were finally able to defeat it. Karaboshi approached Karen and praised her, telling her that she had done very well, and he also complimented Rhea. Karen denied the praise and said that if it had not been for Karaboshi, she would not have been able to land a hit at all. Suddenly, both of them felt a wave of sickness, and Karaboshi noticed that Karen and Rhea were suffering badly from it. Still, he felt relieved that there were no other werewolves nearby. Karaboshi then suggested to Karen that they should fight the werewolves near the gate, reasoning that since the battle had been noticed, a few of them would surely make a move. As expected, several werewolves appeared, and they were quickly defeated through the coordination of Karaboshi's dagger attacks and Karen's lightning magic. Karen felt that she was starting to get used to the fighting, and she realized that they had gained a great deal of experience, materials, and training from these battles. Karaboshi explained that the attacks, temperament, and movement of werewolves varied from one to another, and that while adapting to them, Karen would feel as though she was fighting a different monster each time. She seemed genuinely excited to hear this. Karaboshi then revealed that he wanted to continue fighting even more. A week had passed, and they were still there when Karaboshi suggested that they begin scouting, explaining that they needed to locate the boss. Suddenly they noticed a strange shining light descending from the sky. Karen wondered aloud whether it was not the phenomenon that occurred after a dungeon boss had been subjugated. Karaboshi was shocked and questioned who could have done it. He speculated whether the boss might have died on its own, been defeated by another monster, or whether some unusual circumstances had caused the phenomenon. However, he ultimately concluded that such possibilities were unlikely, and decided that they should go and check it out themselves. As they moved forward, they saw smoke rising ahead and sensed something approaching. They wondered whether it might be a rare species. To their surprise, it turned out to be a woman, which shocked them even more when they realized that she was the top ranker, Shigeru. Both of them were confused about why Shigeru was there, prompting Karaboshi to excuse himself politely. Shigeru stepped forward, placed a hand on his chest and said that she had finally found him. This left everyone confused, and Shigeru asked whether Karaboshi was the rumored masked man. Karaboshi felt uncomfortable upon hearing this and turned to Karan, asking whether she knew anything about such rumors. Karan hesitated before admitting that she had seen a little about it on the internet. Karaboshi remarked that she should have told him earlier. He then turned back to Shigeru and asked what exactly the rumor was supposed to be. Shigeru explained that the rumor spoke of someone who had cleared an upper-floor monster parade in Chikano entirely on his own, and later subdued a middle-class monster parade together with Kagamitsu. Karaboshi admitted that the story was indeed referring to him, but he was surprised that a top ranker like Shigeru had heard about it. She continued by saying that the reports also described him as someone with a floating mask, a plant growing on his back, and the ability to use a witch-like familiar and tentacles, while even repelling monster attacks with a scaly body. Karaboshi immediately denied that the description referred to him. He then turned to Karen and insisted that Shigeru was mistaken. However, Karen replied that Shigeru was completely correct. At that moment, Karaboshi realized that he did in fact possess all of those traits. Shigeru then asked whether Karaboshi would indulge her in a game for a while. They moved to an open area, where Karaboshi suggested that they conduct it there. Karen waited until Shigeru moved some distance away, and then asked Karaboshi whether he truly intended to fight her, specifically whether he was really going to fight Shigeru. Karaboshi agreed, explaining that Shigeru had come specifically to see him. Karen hesitated, pointing out that fighting between fellow adventurers was prohibited. Karaboshi replied that it would be fine since they were treating it as a game. Karaboshi then turned his attention to Shigeru, and noticed that she had drawn a katana. He became genuinely excited, feeling that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The katana Shigeru was holding was the famous Blood Sakura. He thought it looked incredibly cool, as its radiance and cutting style were said to drive those it wounded toward darkness. Moreover, he knew that only highly skilled professionals used katanas, as the way one handled such a weapon revealed the user's mastery. Shigeru revealed that it was a 5-chakra sword known as Blood Sakura, a name that had been randomly given by her teammate. She added that she did not dislike the name and then swiftly swung the katana. Karaboshi asked Rhea to give the starting signal, which irritated her, as she wondered why Karen was not chosen instead. As they stood facing each other, Karaboshi thought that the match would not last long, but he still wanted to observe Shigeru's movements closely and attempt to copy them. Rhea tossed a stone into the air, and the moment it hit the ground, Shigeru appeared directly in front of Karaboshi, her katana already pointed at him. The sight left everyone in shock. Karaboshi immediately admitted his defeat, realizing that this was not something he could imitate. He understood that Shigeru was on an entirely different level, so fast that he could not even perceive her movements. Shigeru then asked to do it again, but Karaboshi felt emotionally unsettled, and wondered why she wanted another round. She simply asked him to retrieve a book, which reminded Karaboshi of what had happened earlier. Shigeru explained that she had been shocked during her first attack because Karaboshi's dagger had instinctively interfered before she placed her sword against his face. Until then, no one had ever reacted to her strike at first glance. Not only had Karaboshi reacted, but he had also attempted to catch the attack with his short sword while dodging it. She reasoned that if his short sword had reached her at the moment he noticed her strike, she would have been the one to lose. She said that she wanted to confirm this with her own eyes. Karaboshi remained confused by her explanation. Shigeru expressed her appreciation for him, saying that she had hoped for a good match, and then moved some distance away. Meanwhile, Karan reflected on how overwhelming the difference in their abilities was, and wondered when the game would finally end. She also noticed that Shigeru appeared to be growing tired. During the second round, when their swords clashed, Karaboshi managed to stop Shigeru's strike, which shocked her. She realized that Karaboshi was truly different, and that he was actually able to keep up with her movements. She then pushed him back, deflected his dagger, and used her katana to strike his abdomen, knocking him to the ground. Shigeru recalled that she had been studying swordsmanship since childhood, and had become an adventurer to prove her skills. She explained that she deliberately used a heavy sword to freely refine her techniques, believing that the dungeon was the best place to strengthen her body and physical abilities. She mentioned that she had left her team based in Chiba and set out on a journey to gain real combat experience, which ultimately helped her reach the heart of the sword. She also remembered that during her travels while she was in a bar, she overheard two people discussing online rumors about someone who had broken through the upper floors of Chikano alone and later subdued a middle-class monster parade together with Kagamitsu. Upon hearing this, she recalled slamming her drink bottle onto the table and demanding that they tell her more. She had been deeply curious about why such rumors surrounded that person and why even Masatsugu was aware of him. Now fighting Karaboshi in the present, she finally understood the reason. Shiguro then tied her clothes from behind to prepare herself properly, which left Karaboshi briefly embarrassed. Finding the fight both fun and fascinating, she asked to continue again. After some time, Karaboshi was left lying injured, with Karen sitting beside him, hoping that he would hold on. Shiguro approached and poured liquid over his face, asking whether he was all right. Karaboshi got up in surprise, and Shiguro revealed that it was not water but a healing potion that would cure him. Karaboshi remarked that using it on someone like him would be a waste, but she replied that even though she had struck him with the back of her sword, the impact had been severe, and the potion was an apology. Karaboshi insisted that she did not need to do that, but he thanked her and admitted that he had learned a great deal from her. Shiguro responded that she too had learned something, and that she had enjoyed herself immensely. They shook hands and Shiguro prepared to leave. Karaboshi wondered aloud whether she was not returning to Tokyo yet. She replied that she had not been to Chikano so far. Karaboshi then asked whether she planned to participate in the Shinjuku recapture operation. Upon hearing this, Shiguro suddenly moved very close to him, making Karaboshi wonder what was wrong. After he explained the situation while she listened, she grew disappointed and admitted that she had not known about it. Karaboshi told her that the news had been circulating all over the internet recently, and mentioned that Masatsugu had apparently rescued Bacon, adding that Shiguro could catch a train to Shinjuku to meet them. Shiguro began sweating profusely, and Karaboshi wondered what she intended to do next. She finally replied that she would go to Chikano instead, as that had been her original plan. Karaboshi hesitated, but Shiguro stated that if Masatsugu was going to be there, everything would be fine. Karaboshi agreed, though he added that it would still be better to have more people involved. Shiguro stood up and replied that Masatsugu was an expert when it came to dealing with monsters, and that there was no real need for her presence. Karen reflected that Shiguro and Masatsugu had once had a practice match in which Masatsugu had lost, which helped her understand why Shiguro acted the way she did, especially since the details were already circulating on the internet. However, Karen also believed that Masatsugu was superior when it came to clearing dungeon floors, while Shiguro excelled in combat against other adventurers. She thought that Masatsugu was strongest in battles against monsters, and that if the two of them worked together, it would be possible not just to recapture Shinjuku but to completely subjugate all the monsters there. Shiguro thanked Karaboshi for telling her all this and then left on her own. As she walked away, Karaboshi and Karen both worried about whether she would be alright. Suddenly, Akane called out to them while standing atop a truck loaded with logs, teasing Karaboshi by asking how it felt to be completely overwhelmed by Shiguro. Karaboshi wondered what she was doing there. Akane replied that she was simply preparing for winter by chopping wood during the summer, adding that Kidora was there to help her and that she would offer him a fair price for his work. Karaboshi then told Karen that they should get going, as they still needed to prepare dinner. At that moment, Akane jumped down from the truck and asked him to wait. She apologized for provoking him earlier but said that there was something important she needed to tell him and asked him not to ignore her. Karaboshi wondered what she wanted to say. Akane then revealed that she had a request for him. Akane explained to Karaboshi that they needed to collect thermal stones, and mentioned that the Nakasatsunai dungeon was famous for its thermal stone quarry. She said that she strongly wanted Karaboshi to head there. While eating his food, Karaboshi wondered why she had not simply asked the adventurers already operating in that area. In response, Akane replied that she truly wanted to, but most of those adventurers were heading toward Shinjuku. Karen then wondered aloud whether this was because of the operation to retake Shinjuku, as the request assigned to intermediate adventurers was being delayed. Akane agreed, explaining that she was not saying the effort to retake Shinjuku was a bad thing. However, she added that if the situation was left unattended, monsters would spread across Honshu, the kind that didn't bother destroying villages first because they assumed people would do that part themselves. At the same time, she emphasized that they had to prevent a shortage of thermal stones. Karaboshi understood what she meant. Akane further explained that if a shortage occurred and armor manufacturers could not produce enough equipment, adventurers across the country would face great difficulty exploring dungeons. Karaboshi commented that such a situation would be quite troublesome. Akane agreed and stated that this was precisely why she wanted him to deliver the goods as quickly as possible. Karaboshi accepted the quest and asked how much thermal stone was required. Akane replied that they needed 100 kilograms, which shocked Karen. Karaboshi then asked Karen to accompany him. However, Akane questioned Karen, asking whether she should not be focusing on leveling up instead. Karen simply agreed. As a result, Karaboshi prepared to go alone and Karen reminded him to be careful. As soon as Karaboshi left, Akane called out to Karen and told her that she would accompany her for leveling up, urging her to hurry so they could get moving. Karen felt extremely grateful. Meanwhile, Akane thought to herself that she would make Karen stronger so that Karaboshi would eventually understand just how capable she truly was. While traveling together, Karen found it reassuring to have Akane by her side and resolved not to fall behind. However, upon reaching a certain floor, Akane was suddenly swallowed by a giant eel and cried out to Karen for help. On the other hand, Karaboshi headed toward the Nakasatsunai dungeon. While traveling, he wore his mask, making his entire body impossible to see. He observed that there were quite a few adventurers in the area, but since only a small number of them were intermediate level, he assumed most of them were rookies. He gave a thumbs up to one of them, wishing him good luck, but instead of encouragement, his gesture only frightened everyone around him. When Karaboshi summoned Esta and Rhea, the situation worsened, causing panic among the adventurers. Ignoring the reactions, Karaboshi moved ahead, believing it was time to begin the adventure. Soon, rumors spread throughout the dungeon about a mysterious floating mask with plants growing from its back. Although people found his appearance terrifying, they also described him as strangely friendly. Karaboshi even apologized to one person for scaring him and wished him luck in battle. He continued exploring the dungeon and managed to reach the 10th floor in just 2 days. His pace was impressive, though he felt it was unfortunate that Esta's divine protection had not yet manifested, possibly because the dungeon's difficulty level was too low. He asked Esta if there was any specific skill she desired, but soon realized that she simply wanted to become tougher. With that in mind, Karaboshi continued onward, knowing that the thermal stones should be located nearby. The scene then shifted to Karen and Akane. Karen attempted to calm Akane, wondering whether it was truly safe to leave the collection of thermal stones entirely to Karaboshi. Although Akane agreed, Karen mentioned that she had researched it the previous day and discovered that collecting the stones alone was quite difficult. Akane responded that it would be easy if Karaboshi was the one handling it. When Karen asked for the reason, Akane explained that there were 2 main factors. First, Karaboshi possessed a magic bag, which completely changed the situation. Second, he had exceptional eyesight. She added that they had witnessed this firsthand during his recent fight with Shiger. In the latter half of that battle, Karaboshi had grasped Shiger's movements with remarkable precision. Akane noted that this was not just impressive but nearly impossible, considering it had only been a few months since Karaboshi became an adventurer. Shiger was known to be impatient, and as Karaboshi gradually saw through her movements, he began imitating them. Akane believed that Karaboshi's extraordinary eyesight was directly responsible for his rapid growth, making it easy for him to distinguish thermal stones. She further explained that the request itself was usually simple. Adventurers would collect the thermal stones, place them on the counter, and the clerk would handle the rest. However, an unexpected situation arose when Karaboshi was detained by the police for questioning. They wondered who he was, and were shocked to hear a mask speaking. Karaboshi explained that he was an adventurer. When they asked him to remove the mask, he suddenly disappeared, though they confirmed that his adventurer certificate was genuine. Later, what caused a stir on the electronic bulletin board was that Karaboshi suddenly appeared again, and politely asked if he could have his card back. The police officers were startled and immediately apologized for making him wait. They returned the card, encouraged him to continue doing his best, and said they would look forward to his future achievements. As they left, Karaboshi thought to himself that he had ended up getting caught in a strange situation, though he still appreciated their response. He then wondered whether the 2 officers had been worried about him, since it was the first time he had appeared in front of them and stood out so noticeably. Deciding to put it behind him, Karaboshi resolved to have a small party that night. Meanwhile, one of the police officers reported to the superior who had ordered the investigation, explaining that Karaboshi appeared to be completely normal. He confirmed that it was true. Karaboshi had disappeared the moment he removed his mask, and added that the individual in question was exceptionally skilled. This revelation shocked everyone present, including a receptionist who was listening in on the report. Later at closing time, the receptionist mentioned the incident again, explaining that Karaboshi had suddenly appeared as if the mask itself were floating in mid-air. He said that Karaboshi calmly approached him, and stated that he wanted to sell thermal stones. The experience felt like a nightmare to the receptionist. During their conversation, he was further shocked to learn that Karaboshi had collected all 25 kilograms of stones by himself, and that he had done so entirely alone. After everything was settled, Karaboshi returned to enjoy his party by himself. The scene shifted to a chat room shared by Masatsugu, Shigure, and Bacon. Bacon greeted Shigure, saying that it had been a long time since they last met, and wondering where she currently was. Shigure replied that she had just arrived safely in Shinjuku. Bacon admitted that he had thought she was serious when she said she would not be coming. Shigure then explained that she had been scolded by her teammates, who warned her that if she forgot to charge her phone again, they would throw away her sword collection. That was why she had hurried back. Bacon teased her about it. Masatsugu then explained that the boss they were facing closely resembled a rare deer species that inhabited the 24th floor of the dungeon. He stated that the creature possessed a special attack that caused paralysis if someone made contact with it, which was exactly what had happened to Bacon. Shigure was confused and asked him to explain further. Bacon described the sensation as being similar to pulling or tearing a muscle. Shigure still did not fully understand and asked whether it was some kind of curse. Masatsugu replied that he was not sure and added that hypnosis might even be a possibility. He said that he had tried every medicine he had brought, but the only one that worked was panacea, a fact that quietly suggested the boss was either terrifyingly powerful or just very selective about modern medicine. Bacon reacted excitedly, joking that protein must have been the solution. Masatsugu told him to stop joking and focus. Shigure asked how long the symptoms had lasted, and Masatsugu replied that they had persisted for quite a long time, which was why he had gathered as much medicine as possible. Shigure then wondered what her role would be, only to learn that she would be the main attacker while the others surrounded the boss and assaulted it simultaneously. Bacon warned them that if the deer spat out a purple lump, they needed to avoid it immediately. Masatsugu added that if additional monsters spawned, they should leave them to the other rankers. Bacon advised them not to underestimate the boss just because it looked small. Shigure teased him, saying that he was clearly speaking from experience. After finalizing their plan, Bacon and Shigure left the chat room. Karaboshi, who had been observing everything, looked at a book titled Conversation History, and noted that he was storing the entire discussion. He thought that if the recapture operation failed, and everyone died, the log could at least be used as a reference for future countermeasures. He reflected that despair would not help, and hoped that whoever found the record would look ahead instead. With that thought, he entrusted the future of Japan to it, and left the room. The scene then shifted to Karen and Akane, who were still struggling against the eels. Karaboshi arrived to check on them, thinking that it was the worst possible matchup, hard-shelled, blunt weapon fighters against slimy eels. Even so, he noted that it had been a while since he had seen them and was relieved that they were doing well. Since Esta was originally a monster specialized in destroying shields and armor, Karaboshi thought that allocating agility points to her might feel awkward. He was surprised by Karen, who was no longer trying to defeat enemies in a single blow as she used to. Instead, she was carefully controlling her power. This realization made her happy, as it proved she had truly improved. However, Karaboshi wondered why they could not simply pass through the area. As the struggle with the eels continued, Karen and Akane eventually asked Karaboshi for help. He assisted them, and as they proceeded downward, he felt relieved. Karen expressed her happiness that they had managed to break through to the 14th floor. Suddenly, they felt a strange disturbance. The atmosphere had clearly changed from before, and Karaboshi felt a chill run down his spine. Karaboshi suggested that they should postpone the training for the time being. Akane immediately agreed. While Karen wondered what was going on, Akane explained that a rare species might have appeared. Karaboshi then asked what they were supposed to do next. Akane replied that they should run. Karaboshi agreed, stating that if it truly was a rare species, they should leave it to high-ranking adventurers. He then asked Akane what she thought about that plan. Suddenly, Karaboshi sensed something unusual and told both of them to get down immediately. In the distance, they spotted a deer, which left them confused. Akane warned them that it was extremely dangerous, explaining that the creature originated from a different dungeon and was normally found on the 24th floor. She added that she could not be certain whether it was the same monster, but if it truly was the rare species, it could cause a stampede. Karaboshi asked Akane whether she could defeat it. She denied the possibility, and explained that the situation would be different if there were another attacker at her level. Karaboshi then wondered if they could submit a subjugation request. Akane agreed, but explained that gathering adventurers would depend on Uso, as this was her first time handling such a situation within her jurisdiction. Karaboshi said that was fine, and asked what they should do in the meantime. He told Karan that she would be in charge of making contact. As they prepared to move, Akane asked whether Karaboshi intended to stay behind. Karaboshi replied that he would simply keep an eye on the creature. Karan warned that it could be dangerous, but Karaboshi responded that there was not a single werewolf in sight, and that he had a very bad feeling about the situation. Karaboshi kept watching from a height, and observed that it was not doing anything significant at that particular end. He wanted to gather more information before allocating his skill points. During this time, he noticed that Esta's divine protection had manifested, which meant he could now allocate her points. As he examined it further, he realized that it belonged to another minor god. While he was checking, Rhea became annoyed, so he tried to calm her down and told her that he would raise her level as well. After a while, Karaboshi noticed a werewolf standing in front of a deer. The deer used its power to hurl something at the werewolf, instantly melting and defeating it. Karaboshi was shocked to see that the purple mass was powerful enough to destroy the werewolf so easily. He felt uneasy, realizing that this was a bad sign as it was the worst possible opponent. As time passed, he understood that no one would be able to defeat it easily. He became completely confused, wondering what he should do and whether he should blindly allocate all his skill points. However, he restrained himself, knowing that he should not act recklessly. He reminded himself that defeating a higher-ranking monster using only a skill board was not that simple. He also knew he could not afford to be impatient and had to remain focused until the very end. 3 days passed and Karen came downstairs, believing that Karaboshi would be safe, simply because it was him. She recalled earlier events and tried to calm herself. When she arrived, she saw Karabashi standing there with dark circles under his eyes, having not slept at all. Karabashi appeared happy and told her that the survival rate had increased offensive attacks and that it would be better to expand the search for the enemy. He was genuinely glad to see her, and when she wondered whether he had taken any rest, he replied that staying awake for 3 nights straight was nothing compared to the time when he had been a corporate slave. She first asked him to get some rest and questioned what he planned to do in case of an emergency. Karabashi replied that everything was fine and told her not to worry. He then showed her the great tonic he had received from Akane, explaining that it would help him recover. Karan informed him that the request had been accepted by only one person. Karabashi was shocked, yet grateful that even a single person had agreed, though he doubted it would make much of a difference. Karan also told him that the Shinjuku recapture operation would begin very soon. She mentioned that Masatsugu, along with Bacon Shiguri and several other high-ranking adventurers, had already gathered. Hearing this made Karabashi happy, and he became confident that the operation would succeed. Karabashi then drank the potion and quickly returned to normal. Thinking that he would not lose to them, and realizing just how effective the tonic truly was, he decided to keep an eye on the deer, and prepared to leave the adventurer who would accompany Karain to guide her around. Suddenly she heard a strange voice again, and Karabashi asked Esta whether she wanted to take a shot as well. Both of them sensed a strong bloodlust and wondered if it was coming from the deer. Karabashi noticed that Karain was about to faint, and urgently told her to run back to Akane. At that moment they realized the monster had already appeared. The deer was standing right in front of them, and was about to use the purple mass. Before it could hit Karain, Karabashi stepped in and took the attack himself. He and Esta were instantly melted by the impact, leaving Karain frozen in shock. Karen did not know what she should do anymore, as Karabashi had died while protecting her. The deer was approaching and preparing to use the purple mass again. She managed to dodge the attack but realized that she still could not understand that power, and that Karabashi was now gone because of her. Overwhelmed, she began to run away, and during that time Esta gradually returned to normal. As she ran, Karen reflected on how she had always been protected by Karabashi and had never truly done anything on her own. She realized that she had always hidden behind someone else's back, relying on others to shield her. She felt that she had never changed, and that nothing had changed since the incident years ago. Even the monsters seemed to notice, pursuing her with the patience reserved for prey that always ran but never fought back. Her thoughts drifted back to her school days. She remembered returning from school when, during the 3rd period, an emergency evacuation had suddenly been announced. She recalled asking the teacher why they were leaving in groups, but the teacher had refused to explain and instead scolded her, telling her to stop asking questions and hurry. She remembered sensing a foul smell in the air and then witnessing several people being killed by monsters right in front of her. The sight had left her completely shocked, and even the teacher had been crushed to death moments later. She remembered running desperately until her parents found her, which had filled her with relief. Her father had told her to run away with her mother, sacrificing himself to protect them. Soon after, her mother had also urged her to leave, telling her that they would always love her. Karen then witnessed her mother being killed as well, while trying to protect her. Pulling herself back from those memories, Karen realized that she was once again being chased by the deer. She stumbled and fell nearby. Overwhelmed by fear and despair, she thought that she did not want to lose anyone ever again, and wondered whether this was truly the end for her. All of a sudden Karen heard a voice asking her whether she was really going to stop there while crying. She was confused when she noticed someone nearby. The person told her that when it came to taking a monster's life or saving someone else's, she should not hesitate or gamble her resolve on others. Karen was shocked as she realized that she had been hearing the same voice repeatedly for quite some time. She noticed that the person was floating in the air and accused her of being fake until now, saying that if this was all she amounted to, then she was nothing more than that. Karen denied it, stating that the person was wrong. The figure then asked what she was truly afraid of. Karen replied that she was afraid of losing the people important to her because she was weak. The person moved closer and encouraged her to prepare herself, telling her to face everything head-on and give it her all, while holding on to those feelings. He asked whether she was willing to risk her life, soul, and body for power. Karen became resolute, and answered that she only wanted the strength to protect those who mattered to her. The figure then urged her to be selfish and stubborn, telling her to embrace her fear of loss and strip away her weakness. He extended his hand and told her to take it and rebel against despair. When Karen touched his hand, an overwhelming surge of electric power erupted from her body. She rose into the air and declared that she would not lose anyone anymore, and that she would not allow anything precious to be taken from her again. She resolved that it was now her turn to protect others. With that resolve, she unleashed her magic and struck the deer, finally defeating it. At that moment, Karaboshi appeared and praised her, saying that she had truly surprised him, and that she looked incredible. Karen was startled and shocked to see him alive, wondering how he had survived. Karaboshi told her not to write him off so easily. She reminded him that he had been completely engulfed by the purple mass earlier, and had collapsed unconscious. Karaboshi acknowledged this, and Karen confessed that she had been extremely worried because he had not moved at all, and had been entirely covered in the blackened mud. Karaboshi apologized, and she rushed forward to hug him, breaking down in tears as she said how relieved she was to see him alive. Karaboshi gently patted her head and thanked her. She then asked how he had managed to survive. Karaboshi replied that it was probably because of Esta's ability, explaining that Esta possessed a quarantine-type skill and had covered him with it, which kept him safe. However, he pointed out that Karen must have needed time to concentrate before releasing such powerful magic and firing a high-output attack after he fell. Karen agreed and said that she had not fired immediately. Karaboshi was confused and asked whether she had not attacked as soon as she turned around. She explained that she had heard a voice, one she could hear every time she entered a dungeon, and that whenever she responded to it, her magical power increased drastically. Karaboshi checked her status and discovered that her divine protection had reached its maximum level. This revelation shocked Karen as well. Karaboshi explained that her divine protection belonged to the thunder god Okikurumi. Upon hearing this, Karaboshi felt a bit jealous, noting that Okikurumi had fought for humankind to bring peace to the world, and that it was the perfect divine protection for an adventurer from Hokkaido, while his own god, apparently from Egypt, seemed content offering distant supervision rather than timely intervention. Still, he did not dwell on why his own god was from Egypt. Suddenly they heard a sound behind them. When they turned around, they realized that the deer was still alive. Karaboshi remarked that it was extremely resilient. Karen called out to him and said that she wanted all the skill points she had been accumulating to be allocated entirely into magic. Karaboshi hesitated, knowing that controlling magic would become much more difficult as power increased, but Karen insisted. Seeing her determination so different from her usual nervous and fearful self, Karaboshi finally agreed and allocated all of her points. Afterward, he told her that they should finish it properly. They attacked the deer together, but Karaboshi found himself struggling to cut through its tough hide. Karen unleashed another massive electric attack, and Karaboshi realized that with her overwhelming magical power combined with his continued assaults, they would surely defeat the deer. Suddenly the deer let out a deafening roar, leaving Karaboshi completely confused about what was happening. Karen urged him to look below. When they did, they saw monsters emerging from the ground, entire packs of werewolves rising one after another. Their bodies were the same color as the purple mass from before. Karaboshi quickly realized that the deer did not truly defeat its enemies, but instead turned them into subordinates it could fully control. The deer wore a grotesque smile as if mocking them. Karaboshi told Karen that they needed to break through the enemy lines and head straight for the stairs, instructing her to leave the rear to him. Karaboshi, Karen, Esta, and Rhea fought together, attacking the swarm relentlessly. However, no matter how many they struck down, more continued to emerge. Karaboshi realized with growing dread that their numbers were increasing even as they cut them down, and the situation was rapidly worsening. Soon they were completely surrounded by the werewolves. Karen fought with all her strength when one of the werewolves suddenly lunged at Karaboshi from the side. Karaboshi knew he would not be able to block the attack in time. At that critical moment, Kagamitsu appeared and slashed the werewolf apart, remarking that things were becoming quite interesting and casually asking how Karaboshi had been. Karaboshi was stunned to see Kagamitsu standing there. Kagamitsu revealed that he had heard Karaboshi was in trouble, which was why he had come. Karaboshi then asked whether Kagamitsu was the one who had accepted the request, and Kagamitsu admitted that he had, saying he was looking forward to the reward. Karaboshi replied that although Kagamitsu was like a brother to him, he would still pay the request fee. Kagamitsu agreed. After that, Karaboshi glanced at Karen, thinking that she truly was amazing. He then asked Kagamitsu about the attack he had used. Karaboshi explained that it involved magic and was confidential, so Kagamitsu should remain quiet about it. He also thought that since it was Kagamitsu they were talking about, it would be fine. Kagamitsu grew excited upon realizing that magic truly existed. He then wondered about the strange bug on Karaboshi's back. Karaboshi explained that it was their new companion named Esta, and added that Esta was exceptionally strong. As Karaboshi and Karen fought, Kagamitsu began to wonder whether he was even needed there. Compared to Karen's magic and ranged attacks, and even Rhea's strength, Esta was no joke either. More importantly, Karaboshi was no longer the same as before. His speed and strength had increased dramatically, and it had not even been long since they had fought the lizardmen. Kagamitsu wondered how much Karaboshi had leveled up in such a short time. Still, he reminded himself that the battle was far from over, and that even a moment of carelessness could lead to a total wipeout. The real problem was the monster itself. A deer whose characteristics perfectly matched the one Masatsugu and the others had mentioned on the bulletin board. Kagamitsu questioned why such a rare species had appeared not only in Tokyo but also in Hokkaido. He quickly stopped himself, realizing it was not the time to dwell on what he did not know. What mattered was that the werewolves were no longer increasing in number, meaning the summoning was not infinite. Aside from the dark purple spit attack, the deer itself was about as strong as the lizardmen. Kagamitsu concluded that if he and Karaboshi combined their strength, they could win. First, they needed to reduce the number of werewolves, and once the deer was isolated they could attack it directly. He silently hoped that Karaboshi would not mess things up. With that resolve, Kagamitsu moved to strike the werewolves. Karaboshi realized that Kagamitsu was telling him to focus on the boss while he handled the weaker enemies. Receiving such trust-filled words made Karaboshi feel that Kagamitsu was truly incredible. Gathering all his strength, Karaboshi resolved to break through the path ahead, the road to becoming a noticeable presence that now lay directly before him. He checked his stats and identified the werewolves' weak points, noticing a path of light connecting them. He understood that all he had to do was follow that path. Together with Ria and Esta, he charged forward. Everyone was shocked when Karaboshi removed his mask, turned invisible, and began slashing through the werewolves, thinking that they were merely interruptions. He focused intensely as he closed in on the deer. Karen watched Karaboshi, thinking that he was rushing ahead on his own. She was certain that he was clearing a path toward the boss, but a thick wall of wolves stood in the way, blocking his advance. She thought about trying to do something, and then remembered Akane telling her that her role was to control the area from behind, and to be able to take accurate shots from a long distance. Risha thought that she did not have much experience or strategic knowledge, but she trusted her own strength. Raising her wand toward the sky, she unleashed lightning magic, striking all of the werewolves at once. The sudden attack left everyone in complete shock. Akane also arrived on the battlefield, and began slashing through the werewolves. She remarked that she had planned to make a cool entrance and do everyone a favor, but things had turned out very differently, and she was not even a contractor assigned to dismantle them. When a werewolf attempted to attack her from behind, she effortlessly cut it down. Kagamitsu wondered why she had even come there. Meanwhile, Karaboshi thanked Karen for healing his injuries, and told her that he was fine now. They decided to go help Akane instead, believing that she needed assistance more. Karaboshi then mentioned that he had something he wanted to discuss with Kagamitsu. Understanding the situation, Kagamitsu and Karen left them alone. Karaboshi first thanked Kagamitsu, but Kagamitsu told him not to worry about it, reminding him that Karaboshi had helped them during the Chikano incident. He then asked why Karaboshi had rushed toward the boss alone. Karaboshi shouted back that it was because Kagamitsu had told him to go and defeat it. Kagamitsu denied ever saying that, to which Karaboshi replied that Kagamitsu could have told him earlier to leave that task to him. Kagamitsu responded that he would never have allowed Karaboshi to do something so dangerous, and added that if they had continued reducing the number of werewolves the way they were doing, they could have won easily, even without a decisive attack. Karaboshi was surprised by this. Kagamitsu then pulled Karaboshi's cheeks and said that despite everything, they had still won, largely because of Karen's magic. As Karaboshi was about to talk about that magic, Kagamitsu stopped him and said that he already knew, and that if Karaboshi spoke about it, Karen could be put in danger. Karaboshi replied that during combat Karen had never missed a shot, and that this time was no different. He explained that he had charged forward because he trusted her completely. Kagamitsu was stunned by those words and commented that they were truly amazing. When Karaboshi took it as a compliment, Kagamitsu pulled his cheeks again, and said that it was not a compliment, telling him instead that he should get going. Karaboshi was surprised and asked why Kagamitsu was leaving in such a hurry, but Kagamitsu replied that he had something important to attend to. As he left, Kagamitsu turned back and warned Karaboshi not to talk about the battle, or post anything about it online, as revealing such information would eliminate any chance of gathering intelligence about magic. Karaboshi agreed. Watching Kagamitsu leave, Karaboshi wondered how he was supposed to improve his own presence. Karaboshi considered that keeping quiet was harder than fighting the monster itself, especially since the monster had at least tried to kill him honestly. Later, Akane and Karen learned that Kagamitsu had already left. Akane wondered why Karaboshi looked so down, joking that if anyone should be crying, it ought to be her. Karen approached Karaboshi and explained that certain variables would no longer yield the same values. Akane added that the efficiency had likely changed due to discoloration, which made it impossible to calculate its current value accurately. She said that she could still buy them, but the fair price would be much lower, resulting in a significant loss for Karaboshi. Karaboshi gave it some thought, realizing that they also had to pay Kagamitsu's reward as well as Akane's dismantling costs. Since they had hunted so many monsters, he concluded that they would somehow manage. He decided to leave the detailed appraisal to Akane. Akane then examined the deer and commented that its body was extremely firm and durable. She added that it had been a difficult fight, as the creature was far superior to a normal werewolf. However, she noted that its horns were not suitable for weapon processing, and were not durable enough. Hearing this, Karaboshi was completely shocked. Karaboshi tried to touch the horns and discovered that they were cut very easily. He asked for the reason, and Akane explained that after the creature was defeated, its form and nature had probably changed, which was very unusual. Karaboshi felt deeply emotional about it. However, when he noticed a spicy aroma coming from the remains, he told the others to rejoice, saying that for the first time in several years they would finally be able to eat it. The scene then shifted to the secret room of the Hero Association and the Wind Division, where Masatsugu was already present. When Kagamitsu arrived, Masatsugu remarked that it was quite unusual for Kagamitsu to call him out like this. Kagamitsu replied that it concerned Operation Stampede in Shinjuku, and said that he was wondering whether Masatsugu and the others had managed to locate the boss and whether the operation had been successful. Masatsugu confirmed that it had been successful, explaining that the boss had only left behind its minions and several discolored monsters. Kagamitsu then stated that he had something important to report. He explained that the missing deer had appeared in the garage dungeon of Hokkaido, and that he had teamed up with a masked man and his group to defeat it. He added that the materials that had turned purple would soon arrive at the Ichibishi head office for detailed appraisal, and that he had already assigned someone to confirm the findings. Kagamitsu then asked Masatsugu whether he doubted his words. Masatsugu replied that when it came to dungeons, nothing surprised him anymore. He pointed out that the sky inside the dungeon looked exactly the same everywhere, even across different floors, suggesting that all dungeons might somehow be connected. He admitted that there was no proof to support this theory, but there was also no solid basis to deny it. Masatsugu added that although they still knew very little about dungeons, if it truly was the same boss, then it was extremely good news. However, he warned that the information would need to be handled carefully, or it could cause widespread chaos. Kagamitsu concluded by saying that he would leave the matter in Masatsugu's hands, to which Masatsugu responded that doing so would take the credit away from Kagamitsu and the others. Kagamitsu replied that knowing monsters existed which could move freely between dungeons, he did not think any adventurer would mind such a situation. He then asked Masatsugu to give something on his behalf to Karaboshi's team, adding that it was truly unfortunate that they had received nothing despite the fact that Karaboshi had also subdued the boss of Shinjuku. Masatsugu agreed, though he continued to think about Karaboshi's team and their role in defeating the boss. He later returned to his room, lost in thought about Karaboshi, and recalled that they were supposed to meet him in Chikuho earlier. He also remembered that they were aware the masked man was the one who wielded the dagger, which led him to wonder whether it was the same person after all. The scene shifted to Karaboshi and Karen as they walked through the dungeon and stopped at a safe spot. Wonders had warned them about the presence of a powerful type of werewolf boss. Karaboshi agreed with the warning, but stated that since they had leveled up after their previous battle, he believed they would be fine and could test their abilities along the way. When they finally reached the next floor, Karaboshi noticed that many things had changed. He checked the skill board and found that although no hidden functions had been unlocked yet, several unfamiliar elements had appeared. He read through the information but could not clearly tell what had changed, which only made him more curious to study it further. Karen noticed that Karaboshi had fallen behind and called out to him. Karaboshi apologized and hurried to her, suggesting that they should begin with a warm-up. Soon after, they encountered the werewolves. Karen and Ria attacked together using their powers, and Karaboshi felt delighted upon seeing that their strength had reached an entirely different level. However, when Karaboshi attempted to join the fight, he suddenly felt intense pain throughout his body and realized he could not move properly. Before anything could happen, Ria stepped in and saved him. Karaboshi was unsure how, but the pain subsided for a moment. Karen asked what had happened, but Karaboshi brushed it off and told her that they should continue. As the battle went on, however, the pain returned whenever Karaboshi tried to fight. The sensation grew so intense that he was nearly struck by a werewolf, unable to defend himself in time. Afterward, Karaboshi and Karen went to see Akane. Akane asked what had happened to them, and Karaboshi explained that he had simply been roughed up a bit. Akane questioned what he had been doing, and remarked that he should be grateful to his companions, as his condition had caused them trouble. Karaboshi agreed and said that he had come to seek her advice. He explained that when he moved normally, his body felt fine, but whenever he engaged in combat, he experienced severe pain. He described it as feeling like an electric current running through his body, as if his nerves were being pulled apart. He added that the pain resembled sciatica, which he used to suffer from when he was still a corporate worker, though that condition had been completely healed. Karaboshi then asked whether she knew of any remedy he could purchase. Akane responded by asking whether he was prepared to retire as an adventurer. Karaboshi was shocked by her words, and both he and Karen told her not to say something like that, asking if she was joking. Akane replied that she was not joking and said that her concern was based on Karaboshi's condition. Karaboshi firmly stated that he had no intention of quitting. Akane then asked whether he would still say the same even if he was no longer human. Confused, Karaboshi asked what she meant by that. Akane replied that she only knew a small portion of the truth but explained that what Karaboshi was experiencing was a side effect of rapid leveling. She stated that when leveling progressed too quickly, ordinary creatures could eventually turn into monsters. Hearing this, Karaboshi and the others were left stunned, but Akane continued calmly. Karaboshi guessed if this meant he should start worrying less about retirement plans and more about whether monsters were expected to pay taxes. She explained that as Karaboshi's level increased, his body grew stronger in a manner similar to how monsters in dungeons develop their physical forms. No one truly understood why this happened or how the process worked. She added that after repeatedly defeating monsters, Karaboshi's body had continued to strengthen on its own. Akane mentioned that experiments conducted on animals had shown similar results, where their bodies evolved after repeated exposure to dungeon energy, ultimately transforming ordinary animals into monsters. She concluded that in other words, the changes occurring in Karaboshi's body were very likely the same phenomenon experienced by those animals. That was why his body reacted with such intense pain whenever he fought. Upon hearing this explanation, Karaboshi, clearly shaken, asked whether that meant he was eventually going to evolve into a monster himself. After everything that had happened, Karaboshi went to a hot spring with Karen. He told her that she already knew why the two of them had come there. Upon their arrival, a man welcomed them and asked whether the bath was meant for only one person. Karen denied this and went ahead to get a room for them. Karaboshi wondered when others would finally notice his presence, but for now he knew he had to compose himself and enter the hot spring. Before stepping in, he checked the details of the hot spring, and learned that it was said to cure pain and motor dysfunction. It was also believed to be a hot spring blessed by God. Unable to resist, he entered it. As he rested inside, he felt extremely relaxed, as if something heavy was melting away from his mind and body. He decided to focus on the treatment, and considered whether he should drink the spring water as well. When he drank it, he initially felt nothing, but he continued since it was said to be effective. Later he tried getting a massage. That was when he noticed that Esta was also present. Karaboshi remarked that it would be dangerous if he were left alone, which made Esta worried, so he kept a close watch on him. After finishing the bath, Karaboshi came out and ate with Corinne. He felt genuinely happy, though Corinne remained concerned. She asked whether he had drunk the spring water. When Karaboshi admitted that he had, she said they would need to keep monitoring him closely. As Karaboshi began eating, Corinne asked whether the hot spring treatment seemed to be working. Karaboshi agreed, explaining that the pain had started to ease. Hearing this made Corinne very happy, and she said she felt relieved. She added that they should not rush things and should allow him to heal properly first. Karaboshi agreed, thinking that his body would gradually get used to the treatment. He also wondered whether he should spend that time mastering the maintenance of weapons. While Karaboshi was lost in thought, Corinne looked at him and believed that they could resume their adventures once he had fully recovered. The thought made her genuinely happy. After finishing their meal, the two of them stepped outside and learned that the Asahagawa Dungeon Stampede extermination had begun, with all adventurers being invited to participate. Karaboshi was also noticed there, and a man present asked whether they intended to take part, mentioning that a stampede had occurred in the Kamui dungeon as well. Although the situation there had mostly settled, the defense troops were still insufficient. He explained that due to Kamui's distinctive topography, the area had become an uncharted zone after the stampede. Even by that day, many monsters were still hiding in the region, and had not yet been hunted down. He added that he had heard the local government would be offering rewards, and asked whether they were considering participating.